Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre. Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément. Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labby.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce. Madame le député Doublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara. Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gorse.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek. Monsieur le député Joseph. Monsieur le député Banash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Wall.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf. Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howe.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac. Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le greffier.
Prions Dieu. Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom, nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir le cœur et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toutes leurs délibérations étant accompagnées de ta bénédiction, réussissent au bien et au soulagement du peuple qui t'a plu de commettre leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant « Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous induis point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier.
Défaut.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Sir, the Connétable de Saint-Pierre is on a pre-arranged visit to the UK to visit his fiancée's loved one on her big birthday. It may be that we mark him as default, but I thought that given we'd moved the sitting to this day, I would explain the circumstances as to why he's not here.
Are you explaining the defo or proposing to be marked excusez?
If the Assembly is minded to mark him as excusez, sir, then I will go with that.
Members think he should be marked defo or excusez?
Sir, in the circumstances, we did move this sitting today. I think excusez is acceptable, but tomorrow wouldn't be.
Thank you very much. Mark the connétable excusez.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
sir, the Constable of St Clement is attending a medical appointment and will be in as soon as he can.
Members content then with the connotative excusez? Excusez. Yes.
Madam Deputy Alves.
So Deputy Alves is attending a medical appointment with a relative in the UK, which was arranged prior to this sitting. So I'd ask her to be excused. Thank you.
Members content to mark the deputy excusez? Excusez.
Madam Deputy Moore.
So Deputy Moore had a pre-arranged appointment on today, for today before the state sitting was rescheduled, but she will be in tomorrow and has asked to be marked defo excusez.
Words either defo or excusez.
Excusez if possible.
Members content to mark the deputy excusez? Excusez.
Monsieur le Deputy Joseph.
So could I move that Deputy Joseph be marked excuse as well? Today's not a pre-registered states day.
Members content to mark the deputy excusez? Well, we can have a debate about it subsequently.
I think the deputy is unwell and unfit to appear, and I'm prepared to testify to that. My lad.
J'aurais que Monsieur le Député Joseph est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé.
Malad. I mean, I think it's right to record that Deputy Joseph sent a message to a few individuals at 22 minutes past the hour to the effect that he was unwell. And I think that included one or two members, including the chair of PPC. We probably won't have looked at your messages. Les états sont constitués. Now move on to the order paper. A number of matters tabled under B. Other matters presented or laid under C. The following propositions have been lodged under D. P97, Draft Animal Welfare Law, Second Amendment, lodged on the 5th of March by the Minister of the Environment. P112, Draft Alcohol Licensing Law, Fourth Amendment, lodged on the 4th of March by the Economic International Affairs Scrutiny Panel. P14, Treating Children as Children Amendment, lodged on the 27th of February by Deputy Banash. P23, Ministerial Office, Independent Support to Ministers Amendment, lodged on the 2nd of March by Deputy Moore. P31, Assessment of Visual Impact in Green Backdrop Zone Planning Applications Amendment, lodged on the 3rd of March by Deputy Scott. P39, Draft Elections Electoral Registers Amendment Commencement Act Amendment, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee on the 3rd of March. P58, Channel Islands Lottery Distribution of Proceeds 2026, lodged on the 4th of March by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Under E, in accordance with Standing Order 34, the proposers of the following propositions lodged au greffe have informed the greffier of the States that they are to be withdrawn. P112, Draft Alcohol Licensing Law Amendment, lodged on the 7th of January by the Comité des Connetables. P23, Ministerial Office, Independent Support to Ministers, lodged on the 3rd of February by Deputy Scott. There is nothing under F, G, H. Under I, a number of written questions have been posed to which responses have been given. We now come to oral questions, and the first question Deputy Catherine Curtis will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise whether targeted inspections are taking place in relation to agricultural staff accommodation? And if not, will he explain why and advise whether there is a plan to address this matter, this as a matter of urgency?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I can say to the Deputy that at present we are not conducting targeted inspections of agricultural staff accommodations, but that I am committed to safety standards of agricultural staff accommodation, and I will work collaboratively with the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs and the Jersey Farmers Union to establish a prioritised inspection plan over the summer that ensures that minimum housing standards are met. My officers carry out targeted inspections of all rented dwellings, including staff accommodation, when either complaints are received or when licence applications are made, and for lodging houses.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Would the Minister agree that there is and has been for some time an urgent need to examine the standard of farm worker accommodation if there is any intention to reduce risk of harm and death to people? And why was this not prioritised sooner?
Minister.
Sir, my officers have undertaken inspections of some agricultural staff accommodation as a part of their routine work. Until the tragic event that occurred recently, my officers had no reason to target this industry as a whole. Therefore, I don't have in front of me any urgent need to look specifically at this type of accommodation.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Renouf.
Can the Minister tell us how many inspections there have been in the last year of farm worker accommodation?
Minister.
So at this stage I can't provide a specific figure because the inspection records don't categorise visits by accommodation type. Officers don't make a note of that specifics. I made a commitment in 2024 that the application form when we introduced rented dwelling licences would be as simple and as possible as it could be, and I specified that non-essential information would not be requested, such as property type. However, I can say to the Assembly that I will be reviewing the application form before the end of my term of office, so that may well be future applications will need to specify that information.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. In his answer to Deputy Catherine Curtis, the Minister said that inspections had taken place at farm worker accommodation. How does he know this if the data was never recorded?
So I'm sorry if there's been confusion. I did say that farm workers accommodation had been inspected routinely, but that numbers hadn't been recorded. I haven't got a number in front of me of how many units of staff agricultural accommodation have been inspected recently.
Deputy Curtis, final supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. The Public Health and Safety Law 2018 states that landlords and employers are responsible for making sure that accommodation is fit for purpose. Can the Minister say whether anyone responsible for work permit accommodation has been prosecuted under that law?
Minister.
Sir, I don't have an answer to that question, so I can't give the Deputy a proper answer, but I will get back to her with that information.
Thank you, Minister. Question 2, Deputy Tallier will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Tallier.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what considerations, if any, was given to the agricultural land control of sales and leases, Jersey Law 1974, ahead of ministerial consent being given under this law for the construction of solar farms in St Clement, St John and St Mary? And if no consent was given or required, explain why not.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So my officers gave proper consideration to the law, and particular attention was given to the requirements placed on the dual use of the land in line with planning permissions granted for the solar farms and agricultural use before consenting to the lease transactions. Leases are subject to condition for use in accordance with the planning permissions, securing agricultural use on the land until the site is decommissioned.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. So Article 2.1 of the law says that no person shall enter into a lease of agricultural land without the consent of the Minister, and 2.2 goes on to say that the Minister shall have particular regard to the desirability of reserving agricultural land for bona fide use for agriculture and horticultural activity, and to ensure that the lease of any such field encourages that kind of use and the cultivation of the land. Is the Minister satisfied that he gave what the law says particular regard to all of those factors when deciding to allow for solar panels to be put on agricultural land, and whether in fact that did enhance the use of that land for agricultural purposes in reality?
Minister.
So the desirability of reserving agricultural land for the use of the inhabitants of Jersey ensures leases encourage a continued cultivation in accordance with the principles of good husbandry. And when it comes to dual agricultural use, combined operation of agricultural activity like sheep grazing or horticulture alongside the generation of renewable energy on this land is good. This approach ensures that the land continues to be used productively for agriculture while also contributing to the island's sustainable energy. When it's not used, for example, in grazing sheep, the land is left to rest, which enhances soil productivity.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Would the Minister agree with me that a field with sheep grazing on it is in agricultural use, and a field with sheep grazing in it with solar panels over their roofs is still over their heads is still a field in agricultural use?
Minister.
Absolutely, I would, sir.
Supplementary. Final supplementary.
So at the last sitting, we had a quote of a dystopian novel and film, sir, and I'm minded to ask the Minister whether he's aware of the 1968 dystopian science fiction novel by Philip K. Dick, which asked the question, do androids dream of electric sheep? And my question would be, do we have a Minister for the Environment in Jersey who actually, in his pursuit for dual agricultural use, is perhaps dreaming also of electric sheep?
Minister. Electric sheep.
As a regular contributor to Farmers Weekly, sir, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. But you can call them electric sheep if you like, but if we can find a way to use agricultural land to graze sheep and to create sustainable electricity, it gets my vote. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Question 3, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister of the Environment. Deputy Renouf.
Will the Minister explain why the Government will not currently fund the extension of mains water services to properties with elevated PFAS levels in private boreholes in proximity to the airport plume area, including residents at La Poulante, and advise in what circumstances the Government would consider paying for the provision of mains water services to these properties?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So between 1998 and 2009, properties in the plume were offered mains connections by the former airport committee. All properties have been connected with the exception of 2 for those individual choices in those 2 cases. Currently, there's no programme for mains connections based on the plume area. The plume, defined by Arcadis, is the area of groundwater contamination where the level is above 100 nanograms per litre, which is the drinking water inspectorate guidelines. La Poulante is below this level and therefore not within the defined plume area.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. The residents had their water tested by Jersey Water relatively recently, and it was determined that the signature of the water had the same signature as the plume. In other words, suggesting that the water was contaminated in the same way as the main plume area. If this were the case, would the Minister be prepared to sanction the extension of mains water, since it would be the same pollution that other residents in the plume area had also benefited from a mains connection?
Minister.
So groundwater can contain PFAS from a range of sources, including potentially the historic airport activities. My officers have not confirmed a direct link in the case of La Poulante, but what I can say is that PFAS levels in drinking water in that area are below the drinking water inspectorate guidelines. I'm not going to say anything very much more so other than we did put a requirement on those houses to be put onto mains water that were above 100 nanograms per litre, and that the homes in the Le Poulon area are not in excess of that number.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. As the Minister said, a number of properties in St Brelard with wells and boreholes have been connected to the mains to avoid further contamination. But there doesn't seem to be a consistent approach. Some households have had to pay for themselves, and for others it was provided. But some are paying water bills and some are not. And in the cases where they're not, it's ports that are paying. So could the Minister explain why there is no consistent approach to the provision and billing of mains water services to those households?
Minister.
Sir, it's not my understanding that there is an inconsistent approach to this problem. As I've said, houses that were in the defined plume area, which had a water level reading of over 100 nanograms, were under an agreement from the airport committee of the day to have a mains connection made to them. If other houses have had mains connections which they've had to pay for, I can only presume that they are outside of the plume area, or that the testing that was done to their water supply was less than the required amount in order for them to get a free connection.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's not so much about the connection as the ongoing water bills. Some households are paying for their own water. Other households, their water bill is being funded by Ports of Jersey. This is what residents are telling me. Would the Minister agree to audit those households to ensure that there's a level playing field and to ensure fairness to all households?
Minister.
So water bills paid by the airport are confidential as far as I'm concerned, but they are certainly not part of what I would regard as government policy. If ports want to come to a private arrangement with certain houses to pay for their water bills, that is up to them and their board. But all I can say is the consistency has been applied. We have connected houses to mains water free of charge under that initial plume area where the levels of contamination were above 100 nanograms per litre, and that's what's done, and that is what is being done as far as I'm concerned. So this is a ports issue the Deputy's talking about, not a government issue.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. From the Minister's answers, I understood that there is no level found at La Poulon to justify connecting to the borehole, to the mains. But from the question from Deputy Ranov, I understood that the Jersey Water has found traces, a signature in the water. Would the Minister explain the difference, and if the Minister would agree to testing himself by the department La Poulon boreholes to settle the question whether the plume's signature found or not?
Minister.
Sir, I have had an amount of correspondence with the residents in the Poulon area, and I can tell the Deputy that I instructed my officers to arrange tap water testing at the 8 properties that aren't connected to the mains water in that area. Jersey Water took those tests. None returned PFAS levels above the water inspectorate guidelines, as I've said, and 4 properties which have in-home filtration under the sink tested lower than 1 nanogram per litre. I can only go back to the area and say the area defined as the plume is over a particular 100 nanograms per litre, and the connections and stuff like that was done under historics with the airport committee of the day.
Supplementary.
No, thanks.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if the Minister would agree to meet with the residents in this area, and if not, why not?
Minister.
So I have, as I said, had a number of email exchanges with the residents of the area. I owe them another response, which I will endeavour to do at the end of this state sitting. As for meeting with them, I'm not sure what a meeting can achieve. I've certainly set my case out very clearly, and as much as I sympathise with their concerns, there are solutions which officers of mine have visited them all to advise them on those solutions, and I couldn't say no more than that, really. They are asking for mains water supply. I am aware that that would have a considerable cost involved with it, although cost is not a consideration for me particularly. But as for a meeting, if the residents want to meet me, I will meet them, but I can say here and now that I'm not sure that there's anything I can offer them other than what I have done so far and what I will do in the forthcoming email that I will send them at the end of this week.
Supplementary. Deputy Tadia.
Sir, the parish and district representatives, as well as others, have been copied into or been sent the email that the Minister received, where our constituents are saying that they believe it has been unequivocally confirmed that their boreholes contain the signature firefighting foam from the airport, but also the fact that the levels that they've seen in their water of PFAS have increased from 2022 to 2025. I note the Minister saying that he will be responding to some of the latest emails that have been sent, but does the Minister agree that, like other colleagues who have asked, that first of all this increase, if it needs to be clarified, because there does seem to be a discrepancy in what the Minister's telling us with what the residents are telling us they've been told by the scientific panel, and secondly that all residents in the area need to be treated equally if they are all experiencing consequences of that firefighting foam pollution.
Minister.
So the connection between the PFAS in the water in the La Pullante area and the airport has not been confirmed to me. It was suggested, I'm told, informally at a meeting of the PFAS panel with some residents, and I can definitely say, in order to the questions around has this water been analysed to make sure that it has the same signature as the firefighting foam at the airport, that this work has not been done on those specific water tests taken from that area. The scientific PFAS panel did not undertake that type of testing. That type of testing was done by Arcadis. It's hugely expensive, but that's not the reason for my answer. The reason is that Arcadis have not been asked to test the water from the La Pullante area. Therefore, I can stand here now and say I have no evidence in front of me, detailed evidence to tell me that this is absolutely the same contamination that's come from the airport.
Supplementary.
Does the Minister accept the statement of the residents that the PFAS in their water has increased since 2022?
Minister.
Sir, as I said, I instructed my officers to arrange tap water testing. It's quite a while now. I can't quite remember the date that those tests were done. But if the residents are telling me that, and I have nothing else to go on, I have to take them on their word. It would certainly be, in my experience, unusual in as much as other tests in the area are falling.
Deputy Renner, final supplementary.
Yes, sir. It seems to me as if the Minister is dancing around the issue here. What we have is a situation where the residents are reporting their PFAS levels are rising. They have been told after a meeting with the PFAS panel that the signature was the same as the fingerprint rather of the PFAS in their water was similar, if not the same, to the airport plume. The Minister now says that he doesn't accept that that is proven to him. Therefore, why will he not agree to do the testing that would settle this matter once and for all? Surely that is the least we can do for those residents.
Minister.
Sir, I take the sentiment of the Deputy's question on board, but I have to ask myself, if I committed to a very expensive test of the water for a few residents in the La Pullante area, where the water coming out of the ground was not above the 100 nanograms per litre, if I agreed to do that, and I would then be obliged, if I'm going to be consistent, to do it for anybody else on the island. There's no direct link. that I can see at the moment, with evidence to show that La Pollante is linked definitively to the airport site, and therefore I have to treat La Pollante area as outside of the plume area and then as the same as any other area on the island. Arcadis have been brought over for the UK to do testing, and we may have to look at it, but I cannot unequivocally say that I will do that, because once I set the precedent, I might be opening myself to multiple claims for similar testing throughout the island, which could run into many hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Thank you, Minister. Question for Deputy Wilson will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how the cost of living crisis is being addressed by his government and explain which groups of islanders, if any, are benefiting most from government interventions and in what way?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. As members will know, Jersey has limited options to control the cost of living because more than 95% of what we consume is imported. This means global economic pressures and geopolitical instability feed quickly into local prices, and inflation elsewhere soon appears across our economy. Despite these constraints, the government is taking clear and targeted action to support islanders where it can across wages, housing, healthcare, childcare, food and energy, so aimed predominantly to the lower income households, although some support is not means tested and available to all islanders. We have established a living wage programme. Income support has been increased by 8.6% in 2024, 4% in 2025 and a further 4% in 2026. The community cost bonus has increased significantly over the last 4 years. We continue to promote competition and value across the economy by working with and supporting and funding the Jersey Consumer Council. The First Step Assisted Ownership Scheme has been launched with 12 million of government funding, helping 65 households to go into home ownership. The government subsidy for GP appointments and home visits have been increased, as has the subsidy for appointments with nurses, allied health professionals, and thus reducing the and for GP telephone consultations, thus reducing the cost of primary care. So, additional support for pensioners now covers eye test, glasses, lenses, dental treatment, dentures, chiropody for households with tax bills up to £1,000. 15 hours a week of funded nursery education during term time has been extended to all children aged 2 and 3. This can save families up to £6,000 a year, sir. And the scheme is now open for applications. Nutritious hot school meals are being provided across all government-funded primary schools. The cost of £2.50 with free meals for eligible households. So government fees and duties and charges have been kept as low as possible, usually no higher than 2.5%. Tax allowances have been increased with the standard allowance of now £21,250, which is significantly higher than the equivalent in many other comparable jurisdictions. Child allowances have also been increased. We've continued to control and bear down on public spending because stable public finances keep prices steady, sir. Taken together, these measures...
Answer has been very long. Is it going to come to an end,
I'm sorry, sir. We've achieved so much, you see. It took a bit too long. I do apologise, sir, that I wanted to get through as much as I can, sir, but I'll give way on the last paragraph.
Supplementary?
I won't be as long, sir. Thank the Chief Minister for detailing his achievements, but the fact is that cost of living still remains the #1 issue for islanders. And at the latest opinion survey, 88% of under 35s mentioned this, as did 80% of over 55-year-olds. So having introduced all of those wonderful interventions, can the Chief Minister explain if any detailed analysis has been undertaken on its cost of living measures, and if so, will he publish this analysis rather than just report policy intention?
Chief Minister.
Well, so we have a number of surveys that monitor how the economy, how islands are doing, including Statistics Jersey, business tendency surveys, opinions and lifestyle surveys. And I understand that the cost of living is still the number one priority, and this government is doing as much as it possibly can. Given the levers, the limited levers we have to do. We have a cost of living group chaired by the Minister for the Economy, which is also working on other areas and other considerations of how we continue to bear down. But the fact is we are largely at the mercy of the global economy and geopolitical instability, which quickly finds its way back onto our shelves. However, we will continue to do as much as we can to reduce the burden on islanders. And although, well, our cost of living, the RPI now is running at 2.8%, so cost of living slightly different to that. That's why we're targeting to the lower income households. So we have to try and find ways of doing more to help islanders and give islanders more confidence and bear down on the cost, continue to bear down as much as we can, sir, but there are no easy answers.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 5, Deputy Andrews will put to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise the total number of islanders who have attended courses funded by the Skills Development Fund since its inception? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the number is 2,072.
Supplementary. Thank you. Question 6, Deputy Renouf will ask of the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Renouf.
Call me a bit on the hop there, sir. Will the Minister advise in relation to Phase 1 of the Climate Council's work whether he has received a copy of its report, and if so, advise when it will be published, and what consideration, if any, the Council has given to how the proposed policies regarding the importation of petrol and diesel vehicles will affect the drive to net zero emissions by 2050?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So I'm pleased to confirm that I have received a copy of the Climate Council's report and will be making a statement, as members may have noticed, on this document later in the sitting, in fact later this afternoon. The Council's report has now been lodged as R37 2026 and has been published on the States Report section of the government website in line with the requirement for it to be published by the end of Q1. The Climate Council undertook their review between October 2025 and the end of January this year before finalising their report. The recent consultation on the phase-out of petrol and diesel vehicles ran from the 6th of November until the 30th of January, and as such, the Council have not had access to any of the data gathered through the consultation process.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. The report talks about the need for clear, consistent and firm commitments to phase out internal combustion engine vehicle purchases. Why is he doing the exact opposite of that?
Minister.
So the first thing I would say that making a decision not to do something is actually still making a decision. But I did come back recently from a meeting with other environment ministers in the UK with 2 words in my mind, and that was just transition. And as with all things, I think when it comes to saving carbon and many other things as well, we have to consider how everyone on this island will be able to afford to do their bit. And it was made very clear to me that by banning used vehicles from being imported onto the island after 2030, we were taking away the ability of some of us who are less well off to be able to change their vehicle. For that and many other reasons, I decided very clearly in my mind, it wasn't indecision, I made a decision not to follow that path that was put into place by the the roadmap some years ago.
Thank you, Minister. Question 7, Deputy Wilson will put to the Minister for External Relations. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what, if any, long-term international or external relations strategies have been produced that explicitly consider the interest of future generations in Jersey, and if no such strategies have been produced, explain why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Common Policy on External Relations is the strategic framework that guides the Government of Jersey's international engagement. It is cross-cutting and long-term in its ambition to protect and promote the economic, social, environmental and cultural resilience and prosperity of the island, and in turn the interests of our future generations. The Financial Services Policy Framework sets out the vision and strategic priorities for the financial services sector in Jersey, ensuring we have an effective roadmap for the success of the industry in future years. Most recently, given the ever-changing geopolitical environment and growing international competition, I commissioned one of the biggest and most comprehensive reviews of Jersey's financial and related professional services sector. The review will include recommendations across our tax regime, business environment and our external growth strategy, and will be communicated in the coming weeks.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir. In 2018, the Future Jersey Vision set out the 10 island outcomes, which was obviously superseded by the Common Strategic Policy. Can the Minister give examples where the specific work that his department is doing has directly supported some of those ambitions, both in the Common Strategic Policy and in the Future Jersey Report, in creating opportunities for young islanders other than in the finance industry?
Minister.
So I can give examples. As the Deputy hopefully knows, we support other departments in the international partner schools programmes with student exchanges. We've got the Franco-British Council partnership, which is new last year and offers 2 young leaders places to professionals under 40 with connections in Jersey. My Assistant Minister is leading on diaspora work out of the London office, Jersey Connections, which is keeping in contact with islanders who have moved away. We've got educational partnerships with the Portuguese Camões Institute. JFL runs Future Connect initiatives tailored to junior to mid-level professionals, and there are many others as well. So.
Thank you, Minister. We now move on to questions to ministers without notice, and the first period of questions are questions for the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. And the first question is from Deputy Andrews, then Deputy Jay, and then Deputy Miles.
Thank
Deputy
you,
Andrews.
sir. I've held talks with Property Mark in the UK about whether a law for estate agents should be introduced. And I would like to know whether the Minister would be supportive of a law being introduced during the next term of office. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Deputy in his question hasn't explained exactly what such a law would do, but obviously the Deputy does know, and the Assembly knows, that in response to the Deputy's proposition of a couple of years ago, we have been working to bring in regulations which ensure that estate agents have to be held to a certain standard. That is involving 2 UK kind of indices, would be the better way of saying it. And that work continues. It wasn't possible to get it completed, the law drafting completed in this term of office, but it is very close and it should be there early in the next term of office. So there is law making being done in this area.
Supplementary?
Yes, please, sir. I'll just clarify. This would be a purpose law to regulate the conduct of estate agents, such as the handling of clients' money, and also for block property management, and there'll be other areas as well.
Do you have a question connected to that?
Yes, is the Minister in support of that being covered in the law?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. It's, I think it is worth seeing how things work with the existing proposition and bringing those regulations in and seeing how they work. I wouldn't want to jump to lawmaking for the whole area at this case, at this point, especially as we don't know what the impact of these kind of quality standards regulations will bring. I would hope that they would move standards in such a way that we wouldn't need a law, and a bigger law in the future. And certainly, I am no expert, but I would have thought things like money being held would also be subject to the rules of solicitors and who are often the parties that actually hold monies on behalf of clients and so on. So I would want to know personally a bit more about how the regulations in draft perform once they're brought in, and then seeing what happens. We should go after that. Thanks.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Further to the written question 28 2026 regarding the social, environmental and economic enterprise pathway pilot, and noting the final report will now be published in April 26, will the Minister advise what specific actions he would like to see take forward following the pilot to support the development and growth of social enterprises in Jersey?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. It is too early for me to say exactly what kind of detailed recommendations I would like to see brought forward, but what I would like to see is social enterprise becoming much more embedded as a concept within Jersey's economy. There are some superb social enterprises that people and members will be aware of, such as BSK or Scoop, doing incredibly well. And it was interesting, I went to a female founders enterprise event on Thursday evening, and one of the things I noticed of the 4 businesses being pitched by female entrepreneurs, 3 of them were really focused in the social space. I'd been to one a week earlier, which was male entrepreneurs, and that was much more focused on standard, I guess, economic opportunities. But it was noticeable that these female entrepreneurs were seeking to solve issues relating to dementia, relating to road traffic accidents, and others. And that again spoke for the need in Jersey to have a much clearer social enterprise framework, because I once said I visited Cardiff in 2021 or 22 with the British Irish Council. At that time, it was believed that social enterprises in Wales had a value of £4 billion. At the time, Jersey's entire economy was £4 billion. And so social enterprise in Wales was the size of the whole of Jersey's economy, thereby showing that social enterprise has a real monetary value as well as the wider social value. So I would like to see us in Jersey have a much stronger sense of social enterprise, and it's something I wanted to do in this term of office. We have made progress but haven't completed the work.
Parliamentary.
Thank you, sir. And I believe the answers to my written question 28 does allude to some actions that potentially are possible around public procurement, and being able to see the Better Business Grant Programme maybe focusing a bit more in the future in the next round on social enterprises. But one of the areas which the Minister just alluded to is the fact of defining social enterprise to be able to benefit from any future. So would the Minister be able to indicate if he would be support, and whether the report suggests that there needs to be a more specific definition on social enterprise, for example, in legislation, to help social enterprises become more embedded in Jersey's economy?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy. A short answer would be yes. I do think we need a better definition, whilst also acknowledging that one of the beautiful things of social enterprise is that it's very hard to see where the opportunities will arise and where people will see those challenges. So you don't want a definition that restricts people from developing social enterprises. So it's a careful balance. I think it's really important to note that the Better Business Support Package is available to social enterprises today. It's available to all employing organisations. So from that perspective, if a social enterprise employs people, they are able to take grants through the Better Business Support Package today. But I do think it's something that we in Jersey need to have a much better understanding of, and the value of social enterprise. And I just thought the reason I mentioned the event I went to last week is because it's a small survey, but 2 events, 8 people, and there was a definite male-female difference between where the things that were inspiring women were clearly different to the things that were inspiring men. And in the 2 sessions that I saw, women were much more interested in those social elements, and women are superb business leaders. And, you know, we need in general to see more women at the top of organisations in Jersey. And if that means social enterprises is one of those routes, then I think that's absolutely worthwhile.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister update us on the progress of the new Gérier strategy?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for her question. Gérier strategy 22 to 25 obviously finished at the end of last year, and development is beginning on the second, it won't be the second, it'll be another, I think it'll be the 3rd Gérier strategy. We do intend that next strategy to be a longer strategy, longer than 3 years, so more likely a decade. And I'm very pleased to say that I've been working with the Minister for Education to confirm the budgetary responsibility for Gérier. And the outcome of those talks was that the Gérier budget in its entirety will move to the economy department, and then the education department will be paid for the teaching work. And that will ensure that the non-teaching money, so to speak, the non-teaching funding can be deployed for the wider strategy and cultural aspects of Gérier, which has been challenging over the past few years.
Supplementary. Dr. Brenoff.
So the Climate Council report talks about the potential to increase taxes on private aircraft movements to help fund the island's decarbonisation, relating it to the polluter pays principle. What is the Minister's view about the appropriate level of taxation of private aircraft, given its current very low level?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't have a clear view on what the appropriate level is. I do know that we worked with ports to bring in a level of taxation. To be honest, off the top of my head, I couldn't confirm what that level is. I'm sure the Deputy does know it. But I think it is something that we should tax. I don't have an issue with that. And I know ports, through charges, were bringing in that taxation through kind of ports charges. But I don't personally have a particular view as to where that should be set. I would need to see analysis before coming to that conclusion.
Supplementary.
Well, yes, if I may, on the Climate Council, stick with the Climate Council. I think it's 50 quid, by the way, per plane, but I may be wrong. The Climate Council report also said that the hybrid electric ferry, which is a feature of his the ferry contract, the new ferry contract, would require portside infrastructure in grid reinforcement with investment in Jersey and in France. Was the Minister aware of this, and what measures has the Minister taken to ensure that this will be available?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And, the Deputy is absolutely right, sir. Electrification of the fleet, whether it's full electrification or hybrid, would require or does require infrastructure development at the port on both sides. Ports of Jersey are very aware of this, and in their Elizabeth Harbour Plan development, that is one of the elements that they know they need to undertake, is an appropriate electrification of that. This is not insubstantial infrastructure development. I've been to Portsmouth International Port and seen the work that they've been doing to bring electricity to the port side so that it can be used by everything from ferries to cruise liners. And it is substantial, as I'm sure the Assembly can understand. But ports are very aware of that. St Malo is in the same situation, and their developments and to St Malo Port also bring that electrification in, as ours will too.
Deputy Taddeo.
Thank you, sir. Sir, on the 19th of March 2024, there was a debate on cash usage and cash acceptance in sports centres. During that debate, the Minister said the following. He says, "I think a better proposition, rather than the one before us, would be one to make it effectively a law that cash has to be accepted by places, because I do believe we are talking about human rights here." Does the Minister hold that view still, or has he changed his mind?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. Nothing nicer than being reminded of something you said 2 years ago, sir. It's always a joy. Actually, my view is very similar, and it has stayed the same. I believe government has a particularly important role in ensuring that cash is available in the economy, and I think that government should be held to that and mustn't withdraw cash from the economy. And I believe government should take cash, and hence the sports centres. And I have always stated that from a business and private organisation perspective, I think it is much more about their choice. Cash brings costs to businesses, and certainly, in discussing with someone such as my wife about charities, there are large costs to banking cash for charities. So, for instance, there is an advantage in not accepting cash in some situations, sir. So I still stand on the side of government should be required to provide cash and accept cash, but for private organisations it should be much more a matter of their choice.
Supplementary.
That's an interesting way of putting it, sir, because the actual words of the Minister says he's talking about a proposition to require government to accept cash. And he says, I think a better proposition, so a better proposition than the one that was in front of him, which was about sports centres, was that to make it effectively a law, that cash has to be accepted by places. So in that, he didn't specify he was talking about government only. And he did go on in his speech to say that actually, for him, he thinks it's a fundamental human right to privacy, freedom and autonomy, which is at stake here. So is the Minister saying that in that statement he was only talking about government and not places more generally?
Minister.
Sir, it's obviously unlike the Deputy. I haven't sat and looked at my quote from 2 years ago, sir, so I can't be 100% sure exactly how the context was. My understanding of my views over time, and I believe I discussed this with the Deputy, is that my focus has been much more on the government side, ensuring government accepts cash. I would prefer businesses to take cash, but I think it is difficult for businesses to be mandated to take it because of the extra costs involved. And as I said, charities, I know that's a similar situation. So I don't dispute what the Deputy is saying, but I don't have the perfect context to understand it. I may have been referring to wider businesses, or I may have been referring specifically to government. I don't know, sir, but my view tends to have stayed the same. Government is where I expect the mandate to be.
Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. The first official analysis of Jersey's 20-year deal with the Danish operator carried out by the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel has concluded that the flat rate system of importing and exporting goods has had more of an impact on the cost of living than government economists predicted. Does the Minister accept that his department got that wrong?
Minister, you've got 45 seconds.
Thank you, sir. No, I don't accept that anything when you're looking to predict the future is getting things wrong. What I would accept is that the scrutiny review talks about the cost of food. The 0.4% that we talked about was the cost of living. They are two different things and two different measures. So, no, I don't accept what the Deputy is saying, sir.
That brings that period of questions, in effect, I think, to an end. Now move on to the second period of questions for the Minister for Treasury and Resources. And the first question is from Deputy Andrews.
Thank you very much, sir. Following the Chief Officer making his comments in the public hearing of the Public Accounts Committee, why did the Treasury Minister and the rest of the Council of Ministers not compel the Chief Executive Officer to reduce government expenditure? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, thank the Deputy for his question. So I think compulsion is a very difficult thing to achieve. We have the Chief Executive has been given a very clear steer by the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers that we need to reduce the scale of government. But already we've talked about a new law to regulate, just in the last 10 minutes, we've talked about a new law to regulate estate agents, a new law to regulate cash. All of those things cost money and we need to stop. I absolutely agree with the Chief Executive that we need to look at other ways of solving problems before we start setting up more new bodies and creating more new laws which create cost and bureaucracy and enforcement costs. We have asked him to do that. The notion that we can just make 1,000, 2,000 people redundant tomorrow is absurd. It would not be helpful to those people or the economy. And cutting costs, we made very, very good start. And I think we should all commit to doing that and continuing to think about the way we spend money in this Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Parliamentary.
Yes, please, sir. The Chief Executive Officer mentioned that the public sector running a budget in excess of £1 billion was something of a surprise to him, and I want to know whether the Treasury Minister is of the view that government expenditure can be reduced, and if so, what needs to be done to reduce it? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I'm sure it can be reduced, and we have a very clear focus on doing that. We've already started by taking out unnecessary vacancies, by reducing our spend on consultants, but there will always be a need for a level of specialist expertise. There will be people who have skills that we simply cannot maintain in the island, and we need to bring people in to do that. We need to think very carefully every time we pass a law about expanding that expands bureaucracy and red tape and requires people in government to do jobs that creates new jobs. But we do need to, I agree, we need to think carefully about our spending and look at how we can bring that in. Everybody has a part to play in that, as I think I have probably said several times, in how we engage experts, how we respond to experts, and how we just basically do the business of government. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Renouf.
Yes, sir. Could I ask the very direct question? Does the Minister agree that the government should only cost £1 billion a year to run?
Minister.
I think it's difficult to say it should only cost $1 billion, but I think it's right that we should aim to live within our means, whatever those means are.
Supplementary.
Yes, I think members of the public might be a bit confused because the government has increased government spending over the next 4 years in its budgets. Does she understand the Chief Executive's frustration that a government that talks about the benefits of cutting spending has actually increased its spending?
Minister.
Sir, I think there was no growth bid. We do have plans to restrain spending, and we will do that by returning, I hope, in the next term to multi-year budgeting. I think the annual cycle of which became a pattern of departments coming forward and asking for more money to do more new shiny things has led to the increase in growth, and I think if we go back to multi-year budgeting, that will help. The growth this year is less than it has been in previous years under previous governments, and it focused specifically on the common strategic priority and key risk issues. We have to remember that we are regularly seeing reports that say we have not spent enough money in various sectors. There's a very careful balancing exercise to make sure that money is spent to address our most significant risks and not on nice-to-haves, which people think would be a great idea in a big jurisdiction, but which are not affordable in small scale. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The Minister signed an MD on the 6th of March to proceed further with the development of the IFC 2 building, which has conditions regarding the occupation of tenants. Can she confirm whether those conditions have been met yet, and if not, the progress of any conditions to be discharged prior to commencement?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. States of Jersey Development Company are working very hard to secure tenants. They have a number of tenants that they are speaking to for that building. What has become clear in part of Deputy Gore's competitiveness work is that there is a real demand for real estate. People are coming forward, they are looking for high quality office building, and that is one of the reasons why we are keen that that building proceeds as soon as possible. So there will be no shortcutting. The States of Jersey Development Company will be aiming to meet the pre-let. They are looking at that, and they have funding, and they will be looking to sign appropriate contracts with all relevant third-party assurances in place. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. I believe the plans for IFC2 include food and beverage spaces. Can she confirm whether there are still vacant food and beverage spaces within the IFC development, and whether that's been discussed part of the plans for kind of occupying the site in general?
Minister.
Sir, I can't speak to food and beverage in IFC2, which is the building about to be begun. But the main, I think with respect to that part, the anchor tenants are more likely to be financial services, who will be big businesses paying, who will really support the building, and food and beverage will be, I don't say ancillary in any kind of derogatory way, but they will be ancillary to the main tenants, and they will help create the sense of place that we want in the international finance sector. I'm afraid I do not know if there are existing F&B spaces still available in what has already been built in the IFC, but I know that to the extent there are, I think there may have been a space still in the Horizon development, but I know that JDC are working very hard to secure suitable tenants for any units remaining unoccupied.
Deputy Jen.
Thank you, sir. At the end of the government budget debate at the end of last year, the Minister said that there were plans underway to curb even more public sector growth than the ones that we've heard recently, and the concrete proposals would be brought to States members early next year. I was wondering if the Minister could update the States Assembly on these proposals.
Minister.
So, States members were invited to a States members workshop in February where we discussed some of the options that were available. Council ministers also discussed some of those options. Some of them are quite far-reaching, some will need more work, and I think, frankly, sir, we are just out of time, and that work will be picked up, I sincerely hope, by the new government. Thank you.
Supplementary. Dr. Renouf.
Similar to Deputy Alex Curtis, is the Minister able to update us on the status of the JDC's Westwood development in South Hill?
Minister.
Yes, sir. I have recently, sorry, that's my microphone. I've recently given approval for JDC to enter into. Sorry, is that?
I think it's working. I think it's working.
That sounds a bit better.
Yeah,
sorry.
yes.
Can I start again? Yes, I've recently signed an MD to allow JDC to enter into a JCT design and build contract for the development of the site. They have also secured a new revolving credit facility which enables them to complete more than one, or to commence more than one development at a time. And so they are able to proceed with Westward in addition to all the other work. A third-party assurance review has been completed and hasn't identified any matter which raises risks that can't be mitigated or addressed. That approval is required for JDC to progress its strategic objectives of delivering new homes and is aligned to its strategic business plan. So I can also say, before someone asks a question, at the end of last week, they have achieved pre-sales of a little over £10 million, which is, I think, about 15 apartments.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for that update. I wonder if that information could find its way into the public domain, suitably redacted where necessary, just to ensure full transparency about the progress of that development.
Minister.
Sorry, can I just clarify what information the Deputy wants to go into the public domain?
The third-party review and the MD that she's talking about?
The MD has already been released. It was done, I don't have the date, 2026-169. So it is there. I think the third-party assurance review, I can't remember if that's something that we normally publish, but it would be available to scrutiny, redacted as need be if they wish to see it. Thank you.
Deputy Tellier.
So it stays in the same similar theme. Does the Minister believe that there are synergies that could be made, perhaps by looking for better ways of SOJDC or JDC, Andium, Property Holdings, for example, being able to work together more efficiently?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for his question. I'm sure there are scope for synergies, but the previous assemblies have set Andium up with a focus on social housing, and JDC with its more about regeneration placemaking. I'm sure there are crossovers that could be explored in due course.
Supplementary.
Does the Treasury Minister believe that this might be one example of many that the Chief Executive is talking about when he says that Jersey needs to stop thinking of itself as a big country?
Minister.
I can't speak to what was exactly in the Chief Executive's mind, but I think both Andium and JDC have had different paths to where they are now. I think we should always be, I think the Deputy asked Minister for Sustainable Economic Development if he'd changed his mind. I think we must all always be open to changing our minds about a strategy and how we do things and whether there's a better way of doing something. So I suspect there is something that could be considered there, but it's not necessarily top of my agenda, certainly right now. Thank you, sir.
That's fair enough.
Last one, I promise. With regard to the ombudsperson and with publication of the Assistant Minister's report apparently imminent, is the Minister still of the view that the office of an ombudsperson will only be created over her dead body?
Minister.
Oh, sir, I think is it gone again? Sorry. So I'm disappointed not to have a question about the Climate Council. I haven't changed my mind. I don't support the notion of a public services ombudsman. We all equally are entitled to have our different views. I think an ombudsman will prove to be very expensive and really will cost us a huge amount of money, and that the problem of complaints, if there is a problem, how we address complaints can be dealt with in other ways, and we need to think about ways that are proportionate and scalable for Jersey. Thank you, sir.
Parliamentary.
Yes, so can I ask what conversations the Minister has had with the Assistant Minister about this matter?
I haven't had specific conversations with the Assistant Minister. I know it will come to, when it has come to the Council of Ministers. I think I have always expressed my view. And I'm sure if it comes to Council of Ministers again, then I will do likewise. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you. The Minister mentioned the new revolving credit facility for SOJDC. Just for the benefit of the public who may not be so aware of it, is she able to clarify the amount of the revolving credit facility and whether there is liability on any of SOJDC's other assets it owns, should there need to be a call on that, should a development not reach the value it is required?
You have 30 seconds, Minister.
Sir, I don't think I have I'm not sure I have a note of the number, and I don't want to yes, I do. Revolving credit facility of 165 million with a potential accordion of a further 85 million. I do not believe that is secured on any of the property specifically, but I can't be positive about that because there's been a number of financing. JDC does not borrow unless it is able, I'm satisfied that borrowing will be able to be repaid as developments are completed in due course.
Thank you, Minister. That completes your questions. Now move on to questions about notice to the Chief Minister. And the first question is from the Connaught of St Sabin.
Thank you, sir. It's further to developments in the Middle East, sir. I'm sure the UK government are leading on this, sir. But is the Chief Minister aware of any Jersey residents who are in urgent need of repatriation? Thanks, sir.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. We have received communication from 7 island residents representing 16 islanders that are in communication with the External Relations Department now and discussing areas where we may support them. But the advice remains that the first port of call for information and up-to-date guidance should be with the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office.
Supplementary. Connaught St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. Earlier, the Minister for Environment answered questions in detail regarding PFAS at La Poulante. So could I ask the Chief Minister, in his view, and speaking as the Constable of the parish, would he support financing the extension of the water system to those affected houses in conjunction with the Jersey New Waterworks Company, given that the residents are frightened, I can use that word, by the fact that their water may be polluted? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
In principle, yes, I would, but I also align myself with certain elements of the Environment Minister's answer. I can refer members to the Investing in Jersey programme. One of the purposes of that is to extend water and mains drainage right across the island, with priority being given to areas with high PFAS in. That is a programme that is a little bit down the road. But in principle I would, but I do sympathise with the fact that we have to be even and equal, and we have guidance at the moment that we're working to.
Supplementary?
Just to confirm, would the Chief Minister work with the Waterworks company to ensure that work comes sooner than later? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
I will do my very best, sir, depending on the results of the election. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
Sorry, sir. The Chief Executive told the Public Accounts Committee that he struggled to see why government should spend more than £1 billion a year rather than £1.3 billion a year that's currently budgeted. Does the Chief Minister also think that £1 billion a year is a realistic budget for government in Jersey?
Chief Minister.
I think certainly I remember being surprised in 2023 when the expenditure surpassed £1 billion. But since then, we've had to contend with high inflation. Inflation alone over the last 3 years, I think, has put in excess of £100 million on the costs. So I think getting down to £1 billion would be challenging, but I certainly agree that we need to continue in the direction of not only curbing the growth, we've been curbing the growth. The increase of real terms expenditure in 2025 increased by 1.5%. That's a lot lower, and it's budgeted to increase in real terms by 2.5% this year. To use the phrase I keep using, we have to, and the next government has to double down a little bit further to make sure we are getting the best value from the public service.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Given that his government increased spending on education and health and child care and so on, where does the Chief Minister think that savings should come from in the future?
Chief Minister.
I think we can make savings by continuing to restrict or bear down on recruitment, consultancy, reprioritising. I think what the CEO highlighted with the need to focus on what works best for Jersey and how we prioritise things. We've increased expenditure in health and education because we'd seen significant underinvestment in those two areas. And in relation to health inflation has been operating well above a normal inflation. And had we not done that, we simply would not have been able to keep up with the level of service that the public quite rightly require.
Debbie Shern.
Thank you, sir. In the same day in the newspaper, the Chief Executive has called on the island to stop behaving like a big country and uses the fire service as an example of where potentially we've adopted fire standards, but I paraphrase, but probably with the costs to go with it. And yet at the same time, the CNAG did launch a report that uncovers extreme risks with the lack of capacity and capability of safety in the fire service. Could the Chief Minister explain which is it?
Sorry, sir, could you just repeat the last part of the question?
Yes.
Which is it? Is it extreme risk that we're under supporting in our capacity and capability with the fire service, as the CNAG says, or is it, as the Chief Executive says, where we should stop spending like a big country and therefore, like he used the example of the fire service, as I believe I paraphrase, but has been given too much money?
I listened to the scrutiny panel hearing with the Chief Executive all the way through. And in relation to the fire service comment by the Chief Executive, he was referring, I think, to UK and European fire safety standards that apply to large buildings, quite dissimilar to what we have here. I don't agree that we can compromise on safety, but I think we always have to find a balance when it comes to how we invest in our emergency services. The CNAG's report correctly identifies that additional funding has been approved in the budget for 2026 and 2027. And there's been recent investment in the fire rescue service and the service is working through a programme of improvements there that this government, and I hope the next government, will fully continue to do, because that's important. I don't agree that there is extreme risks. There is always risks when dealing with the emergency services. That is their business. They deal with risks, and it's our job to make sure they are financed to minimise those risks as much as possible.
Parliamentary.
Yes, I'm just trying to process that answer from the Chief Minister. I wasn't in the room listening to Chief Executive, but I have reports to say that I believe that the Chief Executive was talking about the fire service in general and not tall buildings. But even if we took tall buildings, I'm just wondering to the Chief Minister if he feels that then, especially after Grenfell, that's a UK standard and that we wouldn't have to have that in Jersey for the tall buildings, which we have quite a lot of. And I believe we're wanting to have even more as we are pushing the buildings in St Helier higher and higher. Does the Chief Minister not believe that we should have the same standards?
I did say I do not support compromising when it comes to fire safety.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. One of the common strategic policies is to keep government fees, duties and charges as low as possible. In the context of that, will the Chief Minister advise what conversations he's had with the Environment Minister over the new food regulations and the proposed fees that will go alongside that?
We had great conversations around the Council of Ministers table where I stated I was uneasy at introducing any new fees for businesses, but the Environment Minister rightly pointed out that there were, I think the majority of catering businesses, for example, are already paying fees, places of refreshment licenses and other fees. The proposal consolidates that into one, I think, one new fee. And I'm looking at him for guidance, and I think that's a nod. But I'm still uneasy. I'm still slightly uneasy with introducing any new fees and charges, as were some other members of Council of Ministers, but we made a decision around the Council of Ministers table. Of course, the fees can be made and changed by order of the Minister, and if the proposition is approved by the Assembly, and would certainly be urging future ministers, especially in these difficult economic times, to exercise restraint when it comes to setting fees.
Parliamentary.
Thank you. Given the Minister's unease, and he's right that there are some fees, but these could go up 2, 3, 5 times for businesses, and some businesses don't pay fees at all now. Does he consider it prudent that an implementation of a new fee regime could at least be approved by regulations to ensure it has broad consensus support?
Chief Minister.
Yes, it could be, sir. It could be, but I would stress that no levels of fees have been set now. It's up to the Minister, which he can currently do by order, but I wouldn't object to it being in regulations.
Did you enough?
Yes, so just returning to the question of PFAS at Le Poulant for a moment. We seem to be caught in a bit of a catch-22, according to the Minister's answers, because he says there's no proof of the PFAS plume fingerprint at Le Poulant, and therefore he won't agree to test. But you can't find out if the fingerprint is there without testing. The Environment Minister complained about the cost of the PFAS tests, but they're about £1,000 each, I understand. Is the way out of this not very simple to simply stomach the cost of a few £1,000s and settle the question once and for all of whether the fingerprint of the plume is found at Le Poulant or not?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, again, in principle, I could support that, but we have to be mindful of precedent, because, of course, where does it stop? You know, we're being constantly reminded that we have to bear down on public expenditure. And I would remind members that Jersey is one of the leading places in actually doing something about PFAS in the world. This is a global issue. PFAS is not just about Jersey, but we are, with the work that's been done, leading, and it has been one of the highest priorities for this government to reduce the levels of PFAS right across the island. Now, I can align myself. I trust and have full confidence in the Environment Minister in what he said earlier. But if there is evidence, or households are extremely worried and have some sort of evidence and make a case, I'm sure the government can be a little more proactive in supporting them, but we can't do it for every single household across the island. We're running a programme with Jersey Water in line with the advice of the scientific panel over a period of years to reduce even further the levels of PFAS. And I think we have to try and stick to that as best we can.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I think the Chief Minister will know that I've been fairly supportive of the government on the whole question of PFAS. And I think the question of this becoming a precedent doesn't really apply. The question is very limited to the question of whether the PFAS plume in St. Juan has extended north or south or both. And this can be resolved by testing the water that's south of the plume and finding out whether the signature does extend there. So in the light of that, can I say again, will the Chief Minister reconsider and discuss with the Environment Minister whether this as an exceptional situation could be considered for funding?
Thank you, sir. Well, I would reiterate, soil tests show that the PFAS has not spread beyond the known plume area around the airport, and that Jersey does not have a wider PFAS issue. But I'm happy to discuss it further with the Environment Minister. Thank you.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Returning to the food law, the Minister said he would perhaps support fees by regulation. Has he had a chance to read the Minister's comments that he submitted, highlighting that the primary law gave regulation-making powers for fees, and that the law we're debating this week is for orders, which would mean if he supported the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel's amendment this week, regulation-making power for fees would remain. And in the context of that, will he have a talk with the Council of Ministers about maybe reconsidering their support for the panel's amendment?
I did say I wouldn't object to regulation-making orders, but I didn't say I didn't support what's in the current legislation. I'm happy to discuss it with the Environment Minister in relation to the amendment. Council of Ministers has made a decision. The current position is we stick with that, but I'll discuss it with the Minister. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you. Given the Council of Ministers made a decision, can the Chief Minister recall if any ministers dissented from the decision and what the views of the Sustainable Economic Development Minister were?
Chief Minister, you've got 35 seconds left.
Well, so I might as well use them up with this short answer. I can't remember exactly the position of the Economic Development Minister, so neither can he by the looks of the expressions coming across the Assembly this way. Thank you.
That concludes that period of questions. There's nothing under J. We move on to statements on matters of official responsibility. There are a number of statements to be made, and the first is from the Assistant Chief Minister, Deputy Ferry, in respect of a review of the Freedom of Information Law. Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. A decade after its introduction, the Freedom of Information Law remains one of the great pillars of transparency and accountability in our island. It allows islanders to better understand how government decisions are made, how resources are used, and how public services operate. It has helped to square trust between government and the public. However, despite its positive impact on openness and transparency, the law has attracted criticism for its scope and the occasional withholding of politically sensitive information. While the States approved Proposition P149 in 2014 to extend the law further, progress has been limited. In 2025, the Council of Ministers launched the most comprehensive review of the FOI law since its creation. Today, we are publishing the full review report, the consultation summary, and our 2025 FOI statistics. These materials provide a clear picture of the architecture and complexity of FOI in Jersey, including the fact that government departments collectively manage more than 1,000 requests each year. Sharing these reports demonstrates our commitment to openness and allows islanders to see both the progress we are making and the challenges we are addressing as we modernise the FOI system. Our objective in undertaking the review has been clear: to strengthen and modernise the law, ensuring that it remains fit for purpose in a rapidly changing world. The review makes a series of recommendations aimed at improving the operation of the FOI system from within, which I would encourage the next Council of Ministers to take forward as a priority. I'm pleased to report that early outcomes from the review are without diffidence and already delivering meaningful operational improvements. We are streamlining and modernising internal FOI processes. We are building capability across departments. These are foundation stones to achieve more consistent, evidence-based decision-making and responses. We are introducing a new centralised knowledge library for those responsible for producing FOI responses, and we are strengthening collaboration encompassing the information governance community. Alongside this, we are already developing a new digital FOI portal to reduce administrative burden, improve accuracy and support faster, more robust responses to the public. These improvements are essential groundwork for the future of the FOI framework. We have also undertaken extensive consultation as part of this review, engaging directly with islanders, arm's-length organisations, state-owned entities and a broad range of other stakeholders. We wanted to ensure that any recommendations for changes to the FOI law are informed by real operational experience and public expectations. The feedback we received demonstrated strong support for transparency alongside regular messages about the need for any expansion of FOI obligations to ALOs and SOEs to be proportionate, practical and supported with clear guidance and time to prepare. To some degree, these insights are shaping a phased and evidence-led approach, ensuring that organisations potentially in scope remain actively involved in the process and that any future proposals meet an accepted test of proportionality and practicality. Sir, I want to be clear on one important point. No changes to bring new organisations under FOI law should be introduced until the improvements required to enhance the operation and cost effectiveness of the law within government have been completed. This is a deliberate approach. We should focus first on getting the system working as effectively and efficiently as possible, including exploring opportunities to strengthen exemptions and the vexatiousness process, and to allow for charging of non-local FOI requesters. The review has also highlighted real opportunities to expand proactive publication of data within government. Publishing more information routinely in a structured and consistent way will not only level transparency but also reduce avoidable FOI requests and improve public understanding of government activity. This reflects a broader cultural commitment to openness and demonstrates a determination to build a more transparent, accountable public sector. By modernising the system, clarifying the legislation and applying a proportionate and evidence-based approach to any future expansion, the next Council of Ministers can ensure that Jersey's FOI framework remains strong, credible and responsive to islanders' needs. Sir, I want to extend my sincere thanks to all arm's-length organisations, state-owned entities and other bodies who met with us one-to-one throughout this review. Their willingness to share candid, practical insights has been invaluable in helping us understand how any future changes may affect operations. I would also like to thank the many islanders who contributed to the consultation. Their feedback has been clear, constructive and rooted in a shared commitment to transparency. And their participation ensures that the next steps we take are grounded in real experience and aligned with public expectations. Looking ahead, the next Council of Ministers and States Assembly have an opportunity to reshape how we share public information in a way that is both cost-effective and genuinely useful for islanders. The FOI review has reinforced the value of moving forward, more structured, proactive publication. We can reduce unnecessary FOI requests while improving access to timely and relevant information. As we strengthen the FOI law and system, our aim should be to build a sustainable model that supports transparency, reduces administrative burden and positions Jersey as a leader in modern, efficient information access. Thank you, sir. I now welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Deputy Renouf. Then Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Assistant Minister for his report. When the FOI law came out, most of the information moving around in government was moved by email. Since then, direct messaging has become far more prevalent, if not the dominant method of moving information around. Has the Minister given any thought to how that kind of information could be captured by the FOI law, given that it is now the main route by which a lot of information is moved?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for that question. Yes, indeed. 10 years ago, far more information was being fed around the system by email, and of course far more now is produced on Teams and through direct messaging. But it must be remembered that if this information is still held, it is still available and is still discoverable. So it's not so much the communication method, it's whether or not that information is still able to be retrieved from the systems where it is held.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Is there any guidance to ministers about the importance of keeping records via email that would be easily discoverable, as opposed to social media or WhatsApp or other messaging apps, direct messaging apps, where it is very difficult to do so?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Yes, indeed, sir. So we have had briefings from the FOI team, and they have given us some good guidance on which is the best channels to use. But of course, we have teams where automatically, after a certain period of time, those conversations do fall away. So we do encourage people to use channels that are not going to fall away, such as email, particularly when they want to make sure that those conversations are still discoverable, notwithstanding, of course, that many communications in terms of policy development may be exempt from FOI requests anyway.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Assistant Chief Minister for his statement. He made comment about a new portal being one of the key ways to streamline access, and the report indeed talks about scoping work has already been undertaken. Can the Assistant Chief Minister advise what costings have been undertaken and the feasibility to actually deliver this, and whether there is scope, budget and resource to do so at any time soon?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. It is very early days on that piece of work, but what I have discovered is the back-end freedom of information processes are incredibly cumbersome and labour-intensive. So one of the things that we've been able to do within existing budgets already, is to start to look at having a centralised portal that more staff can have access to, and less duplication of work and less information held in different places.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Really to ask whether the Assistant Chief Minister thinks any further work will be done on this part before the end of term, and whether the public will have any idea as to whether this will feature in any delivery plan this year, the next or the year after.
Assistant Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. Certainly the portal work is in train now. The way that develops, of course, will be post the next election, and if there's any further budget needed for it, then it would be attached at that time, sir.
Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. In his statement, the Assistant Minister referred to plans to strengthen exemptions. Could he give some more details on this, please, and provide some examples of what he means by that and why it's needed? Thank you.
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, if we compare and contrast the UK legislation, lots of emails across government will be exempt in the UK. And we have an exemption that we can rely on, which is policy under development, which is not as strong as the UK equivalent. So whilst this is something that officers can rely on, and the reason being, as policy develops, officers need to be free to exchange views on how that policy is going to affect as there are new iterations of that policy. And of course, where a policy finishes is not necessarily where it starts. So the reason that exemption is in place is so that people can't see, you know, what the discussions were around a policy which is not where it ended up. In the UK, lots of email chains are completely exempt under this legislation. So we would be looking in that direction as to how we can make that better.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. So just to clarify, it would be the government's intention to reduce the amount of information being released about policies from that they are putting together. My question was going to be, could he provide an assurance to the public that the steps are not going to limit access to information that's in the public interest? But I think I've answered my own question that that's exactly what's going to happen here. Does he agree?
Not quite, sir. I think that where information is going around when a policy is in its early stages of development, it is not necessarily relevant to the ultimate policy which is published. So there is a good reason why that is in force in the UK. And it's not holding information from members of the public. It is just making sure that officers can have free and frank conversations as policy develops.
Jodie Scott.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if the Deputy would just remind us what the cost of the centralised process is, and also I note his review has said it's highlighted real opportunities to expand proactive publication of data within government, publishing more information routinely in a structured and consistent way, which would reduce avoidable FOI requests and improve public understanding of government activity. I just wondered if he has done any work in terms of what the cost would be of providing this information in this structured way, whether that would include more in the way of open data, and whether that's been costed and whether any minister has said over their dead body.
Assistant Chief Minister.
No, we haven't got to that level of detail, sir, but the best way to make sure that the public have good quality access to information is through publication schemes. And that means being proactive about the information that we hold. And that means if a requester does put in a freedom of information request, then they can be pointed very quickly to where that information is already produced in a easy to read format. So it's about being on the front foot with the information that we do hold. And that very often will come at very little cost because we've already got that information. We just need to make sure it's publicly accessible.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And in terms of publishing more information in a more structured way, the Assistant Minister said this demonstrates a determination to build a more transparent, accountable public sector. So does he therefore agree that the more transparency there is in terms of reviewing government processes, that this also will attribute towards accountability?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Indeed, sir, the fundamentals of the Freedom of Information Law is about the right to know. That's what it is. The public have a right to know the information which government holds. So yes, I agree with everything that the Deputy has just said.
Any further questions for this? Yes, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so I just want to explore this line of thinking that I developed earlier. The question of discoverability, I mean, the whole point about the Freedom of Information Law, restrictions on the Freedom of Information Law, is the worry that they might lead to information being withheld for reasons of embarrassment rather than reasons of the need to protect, sort of policy under development or whatever. And the FOI law has indeed revealed many examples of political embarrassment over the years, including flights, business class flights to golf tournaments and so on. What reassurance can the Assistant Chief Minister offer that desire to tighten access to information in government will not be used to cover up potentially embarrassing revelations.
Assistant Chief Cabinet Minister.
Thank you, sir. I think what I've described would not come under that exemption anyway. The policy under development exemption would, in most cases, if it's just emails or direct messages going between ministers that subsequently cause embarrassment, that is not what the exemption is about. The exemption is about robust policy development, not about casual conversations that go on between ministers or mistakes that have been made.
Supplementary?
Yes, can I ask the Assistant Chief Minister, therefore, about situations where there may be profound disagreements at the top of government over, for example, how you deal with COVID or something like that, and the FOI law might be used to try and winkle out those differences. Would the Assistant Chief Minister regard that as policy under development and therefore not discoverable?
Assistant Chief Minister.
That is a possibility, that where something is being developed at pace and in an emergency, conversations are had that are subsequently not discoverable. But again, it's the thrust of the law is not to save anyone's blushes. The thrust of the law in this area is to make sure that where the policy ends up is the discussions that have at the end, not at the beginning.
Des Merrill, your light was on, but I think as a minister you can't ask a question of another minister in this session. Jodie Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. In the 2025 statistics report that's published today, it shows that Health and Care Jersey had a significantly higher number of extensions applied to FOI requests, 50.2% of all requests to that department, with over 100 extensions. And that, I think the closest one to that after is 22, so it's a significantly higher amount. Is the Assistant Minister able to shine any light on that trend and the reasons that have driven it, please?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Yes, thank you, sir. My understanding is that freedom of information requests to health are very often complex and information is held in more than one area. So, we try to deal with requests within the required number of days and try our very best to not ask for extensions. But where information is disparate, we need to pull that information together and make sure that the requester gets the correct information. And in those circumstances, we do need to apply for extensions.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Are any measures or steps being taken to try to address those particular issues in that department?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. That is part of the centralisation process. The more information is in one place and the more easily accessible it is to officers who are trying to retrieve it, then the less often those type of extensions will need to be asked for.
Colin Tarver, St Lawrence.
So, will the Deputy please remind us which bodies are actually subject to the FOI law?
Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. And yes, I can indeed. I think if we compare and contrast to the UK, we have Schedule 1. Every organisation which is covered by FOI is specifically named. Our Schedule 1 is far more open than that. But generally speaking, it would be all government departments, and that includes the communication teams and SIPES, going out as far as the State's GREF, obviously the State's New Jersey Police, Treasury and Exchequer, but also including Andiam Homes and the parishes and the Children's Commissioner. What I'd like to see as part of this change to the law is that we have the equivalent of a Schedule 1, where at a glance anyone could look at the law and see which organisation was inside the law, and thereby default, if the organisation you're looking for is not in Schedule 1, then it's not covered by the law.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. My recollection, and it's going back some time, is that there were other arm's length organisations, and we've heard of Andiam, that were due to be brought within the remit of the law. And I'd like to know whether that has been done during the past decade or not, and if not, why not, and who are they?
Thank you, sir. And that is one of the main thrusts of this review. So I thank the Conotard for that question. So if we look at organisations like Jersey Water, Jersey Electricity, Jersey Telecom, they currently fall outside of the scope of the law. But there was a proposition passed 10 years ago, and this is acting on that proposition so that hopefully in the next assembly we can bring those organisations within scope. They all did respond to the consultation. It's worth having a read through to get their understanding. Broadly, they were supportive. Of course, they were concerned about cost, and of course, they were concerned about staffing implications.
The 50 minutes has come to an end unless the member wishes to propose an extension to the time. Accordingly, the 15 minutes has come to an end. We move on to the second statement made by the chair of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel in respect of the Ferry Service Concession Agreement Interim Report. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I hope everyone who's needs a copy has got their copies open, sir. Sir, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak about the findings of the Economic and International Affairs Scrutiny Panel's interim report presented last week, which set out the panel's initial assessment of the ferry service and concession agreement between government and the ferry operator. The review was initiated following substantial public and commercial feedback on the impact of the new service. In response, the panel explored how closely the service reflects the expectations set out in the agreement and whether it addresses the needs of islanders. The panel has also examined what steps the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development has taken in response to emerging issues. The panel gathered its evidence from public hearings, targeted stakeholder letters and public submissions. The panel also employed the service of an experienced advisor with extensive knowledge of the maritime industry to provide independent analysis of the concession agreement. His report helped inform many of our findings and recommendations and can be viewed in Appendix 2 of the panel's report. The evidence received from passengers, businesses and community groups shows that whilst there have been some positive developments, significant issues remain across both passenger and freight services. Islanders reported longer journey times, reduced opportunities for day trips, frequent timetable changes, perception of increased fare pricing, inconsistent customer service and ongoing barriers for those with additional needs or travelling with animals. The continued lack of inter-island vehicle transport is also having a clear social and economic impact. Businesses commenting on the freight service raised concerns about the lack of meaningful engagement with users before key decisions were made. Cancellations, delays, rising costs and the new pricing structure of the flat rate card have caused disruption, pricing increases, increased food waste and concerns about supply chain resilience. Stakeholders also highlighted uncertainty around the vessel investment. Overall, the operator is meeting the minimum contractual requirements. Those minimum standards do not necessarily match expectations, underscoring the need for stronger oversight, clearer governance, and closer alignment between the agreement and the needs of islanders. The panel's report also draws members' attention to several areas where further tightening of oversight and governance are needed to ensure the ferry service meets islanders' needs, with key recommendations centring around the following: cost analysis of passenger fares to ensure that pricing caps are set at an appropriate and justifiable level, strengthening the governance of the concession agreement, particularly the scope and authority of the monitoring committee, which must be equipped to provide effective oversight through the contract term. Development of solutions to address the lack of inter-island connectivity, the need for an independent review of the flat rate freight pricing structure to assess its impacts and if it is meeting its intended goals, and ensuring early structured engagement with freight users before any changes to schedules or operations are proposed to minimise negative effects where possible. The panel recognises that efforts are being made by both the ferry operator as it continues to stabilise services, and by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development in monitoring performance and maintaining oversight. These steps are welcome. However, the panel's recommendations are designed to ensure that this progress is not only maintained but strengthened, that it is supported by a clearer governance and a consistent focus on the needs of islanders and businesses. Our intention is to ensure that the operation of this lifeline service evolves in a way that reflects the realities of living and working on an island community. Ultimately, the panel's recommendations aim to secure a ferry service that is sustainable, affordable, and reliable, and more aligned with the expectations of the people and businesses it serves. The purpose of this interim report has been to set out the evidence needed to support informed government action. With key contractual milestones approaching, including the first-year KPI review and the decisions on vessel investment, continued scrutiny is essential. It will be for the next scrutiny panel to take this work forward and ensure both government and the operator to deliver meaningful progress. Sir, I would like to thank all stakeholders and members of the public who took the time to write to and speak with the panel, including the Minister, the Route Director of DFDS in Jersey, and their time and responses. Finally, a big thank you to my panel members, the Vice Chair, Deputy Karen Wilson, Deputy Max Andrews, and our recent addition, Deputy Beatrice Porre, and most of all our scrutiny officer and her team for their excellent work they have done in completion of this report, especially at such a busy time of the parliamentary term. So I commend the report to the Assembly and welcome any questions that members may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the panel chair? Conor Thompson, John.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the report, sir. Sir, the Chair's called for a review of the fixed rate card, suggesting it has caused price inflation. The DFDS rate, sir, is around £56 per late metre for everybody. Can you actually tell us what the lowest price and highest price was under the previous operator? Thank you.
Chair.
So the Minister knows that we weren't here to conduct a review of the previous operator. What we were here to do was consider the current agreement that this government and his government has entered into for the next 20 years with a sole operator. And so what we did, of course, was look at the evidence around that, and we did get evidence from business that says things like the impact to date has been an incremental increase in the price of food by 2%. We've heard from other importers that actually the very real impact of the flat rate card for them is that it's inflationary. I can give further quotes, but I'll give perhaps one last one in some for this part, sir. One public submission says the pricing model of the flat rate penalises larger companies who did and now should get bulk discounts but do not. Freight increases this year for us are between 7 and 14%, and we don't know where the extra costs are being accrued.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I've just checked the JCR website and I note that they still have an investigation going, some 8 months since starting it, into freight. Does the Chair not feel that we should await the outcome of that investigation before we consider making any changes? Thank you, sir.
Chair.
So I think we very much accept that we're now on the cusp of the end of this electoral term and the beginning of a new one, and that actually it may well be something that the new government needs to consider. They may wish for the JCRA report to be concluded. I don't think we formally know what that report, what that investigation is and what the findings will be. What I would say, though, is that it's interesting that it was always open to any previous government, and including this government, to refer matters where they thought competition was not being respected or whether there was an abuse of any market position. And that could have been an alternative to necessarily imposing a flat rate card with the desired, with a hope for a desired outcome, which it may not ultimately have had.
Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. Chair mentions that the operator is meeting the minimum contractual requirements, but these do not match user expectations, but of course the minimum contractual requirements was drafted by and put there by the government. Can the chair maybe expand a little bit on this, whether it's the agreement itself that doesn't match user expectations, or is it the operator?
Chair.
So in answering that question, very good question, I think the answer I would give is to refer to a section in our advisor report where it was pointed out that the central issue isn't whether the contract is being followed, but whether the contracting model chosen can actually meet Jersey's economic needs to support the community and businesses, to make sure that resilience and expectations are met, and that the public's understanding of what a lifeline service should provide is also met. So I think very much what we're saying is that there isn't a problem with the contract, but if there are limitations in the contract around levers, for example, and enforcement, then those are the trade-offs that have been made with government, choosing a type of contract that perhaps minimises government risk, but also provides perhaps slightly less levers than one might have wanted in assuring things like timely travel and other service requirements.
Supplementary.
Thank the chair for that, and I think that's probably quite an important finding of the panel about the lack of strong levers and enforcement mechanisms to help the operators to meet their contract. Did the panel ask these questions of the minister, and why were these levers and enforcement or stronger levers left out of owner contract agreement, especially as we've seen in the past? That potentially was why we saw the other operator not being chosen, because they weren't following their contractual agreement the last time as well. So I believe this would have been a lesson learned before.
Chair.
So I think what becomes apparent became apparent whilst we were doing the review is that there are a lot of moving parts here, and it has to be emphasised that the starting point from which the contractor, the ultimate successful tenderer, DFDS, was operating was suboptimal, if I can use that euphemistically, and I say that in my forward, sir, and that there are a lot of consequences from that. Also, the choice of type of contract, which I don't think we're criticising, but it recognises the fact that it does put the risk and all the potential gain with the operator. This isn't like a bus service, for example, that government has contracted to run, which will be offering subsidies in return for a high level of scheduling input from the minister or from ports. It's actually fairly hands-off, but with some minimum requirements that are in the contract. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but there are consequences for having chosen that kind of contract to be in place. I hope that partly answers the Deputy's question.
Deputy Brenner.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has stated in the past that one of the main reasons for using the fixed price, no discount model is to encourage onward freight competition in the onward freight market in the island. I wondered whether the Chair and his panel had examined this at all, or whether they had a view on whether that was likely, possible, or realistic.
Chair.
So I think the way we phrased it, and what also our advisor found, is that the wording is very much, we accept that there could theoretically be some winners in this. And I've certainly anecdotally heard, and I think we had one private submission which said that there was a company that benefited very much from the flat rate card. What I was slightly disappointed with is that we did actually try and solicit some businesses and users to come forward with some evidence that the flat rate card had actually helped them and it was having the desired consequence, and that evidence was very thin on the ground. So I'm not saying that I don't think that there will be winners and losers in this. What I am saying is that it was much easier for our panel to find those who were coming forward with a whole load of, I think, legitimate criticisms of the flat rate card, and it was more difficult to find those who were talking to what the Minister's positive aspirations were in setting it up.
Supplementary?
Yes, so just to clarify, was there any evidence that costs had been reduced so far, admitting that these things might take time? Was there any evidence that costs had been reduced so far as a result of the flat rate card?
Chair.
So our evidence is that globally costs haven't been reduced. Indeed, the minister's figure, the minister stated that costs have gone up by 0.4% on the shelves. We've been told that costs have gone up by 2% on the shelves. It will vary, no doubt, from sector to sector. And so I think if I'm trying to be helpful and be as magnanimous as possible, time may tell in a year or two whether there are some winners in this, and there may well be. And there may be some businesses that are willing to come forward in future and say that they've benefited from this flat rate card, but that's not where the overwhelming evidence is that we've received.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. We have scrutiny in order to kind of work well to supposedly to make people accountable, and that's the question that I'm asking, because the chair has mentioned lots of movable parts in terms of analysing this area. So that can include a competition, the extent to which it was realistic, sustainable in this island, flat rate card, the choice of it, it was mentioned as a political choice, inter-island connectivity, the way in which the guarantee of performance obligations as a counterbalance to the financial status Condor was dealt with, and the choice not to consult with major stakeholders that might have given information. All of these things are there, but the question I have is, do you really feel, or does the chair really feel, that he has established political or apportioned political and executive accountability? So the extent to which, for example, the minister could have been advising on officer advice or was ignoring it. And on that basis, because he's aware that I withdrew a proposition just recently coming to a conclusion about letters of instruction, were there any letters of instruction kind of issued in terms of this? Does he believe that if there weren't, that perhaps the whole kind of regime of letters of instruction isn't being helpful to scrutiny insofar as it's confined to public finance manual issue matters rather than, say, more economic issues?
Chair.
So I heard two main questions there. I think the first one seemed to be to me like an invitation to try and drop her minister in it, insofar as she was asking, are we trying to hold somebody accountable for the decisions that have been made? Ultimately, of course, to answer that, we know that this was predominantly the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development and his department's contract. They're the ones who negotiated it and signed it. And I know that the tender process, there was lots of discussions before that, which did go to Council of Ministers as well. I don't know whether the Assistant Minister herself was included in any of those decisions, but that's for her to answer, and I'm not here to question her. The second part about letters of instruction, that's something that never came up during the review. We were not made aware of any letters of instruction. There was never a suggestion that the Minister or the officers in his department were acting anything other than in tandem. And I presume that the Minister was taking advice and having input and giving advice back to officers when it came to negotiating and developing what went in the contract and what wasn't in the contract. But if the Assistant Minister knows more than that, I'm sure we'd all be interested to hear.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. One of the things that the panel might have honed in on was that there was an estimate of the likely impact of the flat rate card that had been relied on by the Minister. And it does seem somewhat out of whack with what has been given in the way of evidence to the panel. So I'm wondering, to what extent did the panel explore this discrepancy and the extent to which, again, not engaging the main stakeholders might have been a factor here?
Chair.
So I'm not really sure how to answer that, so I'm going to have to think about that question and see if I can come back to the Minister offline.
Lady Miller.
Thank you, sir. So the report suggests that the panel and the advisor did an evaluation of Jersey's concession agreement with other jurisdictions, including Guernsey. Did the advisor have access to Guernsey's own concession agreement?
Chair.
So I think what the advisor did was to look at documents that were in the public domain, sir, and extrapolate from there.
Supplementary.
So that's based entirely on public domain, which will be very limited. Thank you, sir.
Is that a question?
I'm just asking for confirmation that the advisor has not looked at other contracts, because it's quite unusual for a concession agreement to be in the public domain. So the advisor, well, I'm just asking him to confirm that the advisor hasn't looked at other contracts and has simply made the best he can with what information is available in the public domain. Is that the case?
So the advisor will have done to whatever extent he could, a comparative study. So he does look at other models around the British Isles for contracts or operating models that are in place. Of course, he's not going to have access to documents that are not in the public domain and that haven't been published.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Chair and his panel for their work and for the report that they produced. It is helpful, sir, there's no question. And I'm also grateful for the finding that the contract is working as intended, sir. I was wondering, and it is of interest because the Deputy, as Chair, has said, has talked a lot about governance and levers under this concession agreement, yet there's no mention of the previous concession agreement, sir, where I believe not just myself as Minister, but my predecessor as Minister, now Chief Minister, has said many times that the previous concession agreement had no teeth and had no levers, sir. So could the Chair confirm that this agreement has levers that were not in place in the previous agreement, sir?
Chair.
So again, I'll just say to the Minister, we weren't here to do a comparative contrast and compare study with the previous contracts. So what we were here to do was look at the decisions that this government has said. What I would say, if it's helpful, sir, we know that the Minister isn't responsible for the previous contracts, and we do understand that there were concerns from this government about the operations of the previous operator, sir. We also acknowledge as a panel that when you're conducting such a review, you are going to solicit, especially in the first year, when there have been teething problems from a new operator, that you are more than likely going to hear from people who have got a complaint to make than necessarily from people who have received good service. And we did, in fact, hear from both sides in this. So I hope that does go some way to answering the Minister's questions. I'm trying to remember, actually, whether we would have even had sight of the previous contract. I know we did ask to see, and it was very difficult, actually. I remember having conversations about asking to compare levels of service, and it wasn't easy to compare the last 20 years.
I'll need to stop you there, Chair, because the 15 minutes have expired. Do members wish to continue this and extend the time? I've got 2 more members who wish to ask questions. We can extend the time. Are members content to extend for further 15 minutes, of which 1 minute we've already had? So there's 14 minutes left. Supplementary, Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his answer, sir. And understandably, and from my previous role as Chair of the Scrutiny Panel, I know that it is up to the panel to set their own terms of reference for a review. It is up to nobody else, sir. So could the Chair advise the Assembly as to why the panel chose not to include any comparison with the previous concession agreement, which was in the public domain, sir, so not difficult to find. It has been published for many years on the government website, sir. Could he explain why there was chosen not to have any reference or comparison to the previous agreement?
Chair.
So I think because we're in a different point in the economy is one answer, and the panel has really a finite amount of time to try and compare. And we actually set out saying to people, we don't want your submissions saying, tell us whether DFTS is better than Condor, because that wouldn't have really been productive. And so I don't think that would have been in any way a helpful way for us to start, sir. I think what we have done, and I'll reiterate the point, is that we've looked at what we've had in front of us. We've looked at the current state of the economy, the current needs of the island, and gathered evidence from businesses who operate in Jersey now and what they've told us, as well as the government and officers who are in power now, not those who were here 20 years ago. And I think to look at a contract from 20 years ago where those individuals, by and large, are not here to be held to account, sir, I think would have not been a great use of our time.
Sir, point of clarification, and it's a friendly and nice factual one, sir.
Well, are you prepared to give way to point of clarification? I'm not sure that's really...
Of course.
Yes, all right.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy. It was just to confirm that the previous concession agreement wasn't 20 years old. It was signed in 2014. Can the Chair clarify that that was the case, sir?
The Minister's just clarified that, so that's still a good few years ago, not quite 20 years, but getting on there.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. In my previous question to the Sustainable Economic Development Minister, he sort of refuted effectively the commentary made about the inflationary impact on food prices on the supermarket shelf that the panel concluded on. He used an interesting term here. He said, he responded by saying it's a cost of living versus a cost per basket of goods, and they are different.
So that's not what I said, sir.
Well, you can't interrupt someone who's asking a
Sorry, point
question.
of clarification, sir, because those were not my words, sir.
Well, continue your question.
Sorry, that was my impression. So, in simple terms, does the chair of the committee, the scrutiny panel, I should say, agree that the minister has actually got a point, that we're talking different between apples and pears in terms of how these measurements are made?
Chair.
So I think the interruption threw me, sir. Can the questioner just clarify exactly what point I'm supposed to agree or disagree on?
Well, as far as I'm aware, that when I asked the question of the minister, his commentary was that although the figure the panel had come up with was 2%, his advisors had come up, I think it was 0.4%, that differential, when I said, well, his department had got it wrong on those numbers, the minister challenged that and said, no, I don't believe we did get it wrong. So I'd like interested to hear your commentary. The chair's commentary.
Yeah. I think there was an issue with the 0.4% figure. It seemed already by the time we'd started this to be out of date. It didn't take into consideration developments that happened subsequently. So, for example, we know that last year lots of businesses were contacting us, and no doubt other states members, about retrospective port fees that were being charged to businesses who were both importing and exporting. And they said, look, we haven't accounted for any of this. And that 0.4 figure was calculated before any of that was known. So we already know that on top of the flat rate prices that businesses thought they were paying, there was this additional fee that DFDS hadn't billed them for, which was in itself also unexpected and potentially inflationary. What I can say is that the retailers have come to us and say the effect it's having to us, we've calculated is 2% on the shelf, not 0.4%, and we can only take that from them, sir.
Supplementary?
No, thanks.
Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir, and I'm grateful for the Chair's acknowledgement that DFDS, the new incumbent, managed to put on a freight and passenger ferry service almost from a standing start. But my question is this, sir, does the Chair agree, or does the Chair have a view that we should have allowed a maybe slightly longer time before reviewing, and that a lot of his evidence may be based on the first 6 months where the company really needed more time to settle down?
Chair.
I think the panel was between a rock and a hard place, because we were expected, I think, by many people to do a review in a timely fashion. So this is the first opportunity that we had to do a review. So in an ideal world, I think that there would have been pre-scrutiny before the tender was even entered into, before the contract was even signed, sir, and that's often what happens. I accept that this is an unusual situation, and that commercial sensitivity is going to be one of the key considerations, sir. What we have emphasised is that this is very much an interim review, and we do agree with the point made by the Minister that actually to have a proper study done and a period of reflection needs to have passed where DFDS has been operating for a couple of years, so you can compare with the shaky first year that they've had, which wasn't their fault for a lot of it, compared to a couple of normal years of operating, and also see what effect it's had on the wider economy, not least the tourism industry.
Supplementary?
Oh, yes, thank you, sir. The Chair mentioned the contract. Can I just ask him, did the Chair or the panel come up with a view as to whether they think the minimum service level agreement was set in the right place?
So I think broadly we're not critical of what's in the service level agreement. I think there are we note though that there are some levers for enforcement which are not as strong as they could be. So for example, there are KPIs around meeting your timetabling, but there isn't anything that says how long it should take to get to St Malo. So you could meet all of your timetabling because you're within the 2-hour window to get to St Malo. Most people you talk to think that 2 hours is far too long a time to get to St Malo, especially if you're going there for a day trip, especially when people are used to perhaps an hour 20, and they've got memories of the hydrofoil that used to leave the Albert Quay, and they've got memories of the old Condor doing it in perhaps about 1 hour, 1 hour 10. So yeah, I think it's a difficult one.
Deputy Miller.
Thank you, sir. I have so many questions, I'm not sure where to start. Can I just say, the Chair said that the expert advisor had based his review of our concession agreement against others on the basis of what he was aware of in the public domain about other operating models and agreements elsewhere. He's also suggested that the people who came forward to complain about the pricing for forward freight, the majority of them came to complain rather than to say they were happy, and they have extrapolated that therefore that more people are unhappy than happy. Does he accept that there seems to be quite a lot of guesswork and estimation going on in some of the conclusions?
Chair.
So I have to remind myself sometimes that some of our ministers have never actually sat on scrutiny before, and so they don't always appreciate the way that it works, and that's certainly the case for the questioner, sir. I hope that she still gets the opportunity in future, though, to fulfil that very important function. Sir, I'd say the scrutiny function is one that relies on evidence, and whether the minister will know, having worked previously in the legal profession, that evidence is imperfect and that you have to weigh that up with contrasting evidence and come up with a narrative that seems to make sense. And of course you hold public hearings, and we have had lots of public hearings where the minister, and I forgot to thank his team actually, I think that was implicit if I didn't in that, that we weigh up the evidence, sir. In simply saying that there are always two sides to the story, we do recognise the fact that not all evidence is equal, but we still have to listen whether there's an overwhelming amount of evidence in several directions, and those do find their way into key findings and key recommendations, sir.
Supplementary?
Can I have a different question?
It's going to be supplementary to the one you've just asked.
Okay.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. At the time that the deputy stood or pushed forward to be chair of the scrutiny panel, I, as the former chair of the scrutiny panel, actually asked him if he would be continuing the supply chain review that my panel had initiated. And at the time that I had taken a different position, the panel was looking into engaging an independent expert in freight matters to advise in this area, including in areas in competition. And we also had, and how sustainable it was, and we also had established that main stakeholders hadn't been consulted on the contract because of perceived conflicts of interest. So, then subsequently, this review wasn't continued with. I wonder if the chair might offer a view whether that perhaps was the best decision to have made in the circumstances, whether it might have deprived the panel of the opportunity to be a bit kind of to able to anticipate some of the problems that they had subsequently identified, and why they abandoned that review nonetheless.
Chair.
So I think that's slightly outside the scope of this statement. So what I would simply say, I mean, there is an overlap perhaps, is that there was a sudden change in government, and there was therefore a sudden change in some of the scrutiny panel chairs and makeups. And I think we decided as a panel, we did actually publish the review that the member talks about, but we do also appreciate that towards the end of her chairing, the panel was effectively functioning, I think, as a two-person panel, and that we thought rather than it was best to publish that document effectively as a piece of their work with a top and tail from our panel, so that their evidence they gathered could still see the light of day, but it shouldn't in any way be judged as a piece of work that was ultimately done in any substantial way by our panel, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Nevertheless, the chair had indicated that he would be continuing the review, so I just wondered what his position was after assuming the position of chair, whether he still had been of the view that he should continue the review, and also whether he might just confirm that he had been invited to join the panel when I was chair and had refused.
I'm not sure that's relevant, but carry on, Chair. Yes.
So I'm certainly happy to confirm that last point. Thank you.
Conataba St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. And I'm grateful to the panel for their report. I think I would just ask the chair just to confirm a couple of points which I perceive to be the case. I mean, generally the general public, the mercantile travelling public will want a cheap voyage, a reliable voyage. They want calm seas all the time and reliable times. And of course, would he confirm, sir, that DFDS are actually doing that to the best of their ability? Thank you, sir.
Chair.
Thank you, sir. I did make a point, I think, in some of my statements, and I think it's in the report, that it has to be said DFDS want to provide a good service to Jersey. That's what they told us in our hearings, and I think that goes without saying as well for a company who's engaged on a 20-year contract. And I have to say, in suboptimal circumstances, that both the tenderers previously thought they were tendering for a contract which would be pan-Channel Islands, where there would be a bigger market, where there would be inherent market synergies, and ultimately more money at play. I think we have to accept the fact that they both decided to tender, and that DFDS have told us that they feel that they're here for the long haul and want to make a good go of it in Jersey, sir. So I think that ultimately answers the Constable's question.
That brings the second period of questions to an end. And we now move to thank you, Chair, we now move to the third statement made by the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee regarding arm's length bodies, grants and subsidies review. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I wish to make a statement on the Public Account Committee review of arm's length bodies, grants and subsidies following the presentation of its report. This review was undertaken because the islands is facing increasing pressure on public finance, rising demand for public services, and significant long-term economic and demographic challenges. In such a context, it is essential that public funds are used effectively, that responsibilities are clear, and that publicly funded organizations are working together towards shared priorities. The committee wishes to emphasize that this review was not a criticism of an individuals or of the organizations themselves. Throughout our work, we met committed and skilled professionals working with dedication and creativity to serve the island. Many organizations make a positive contribution to island life and are doing the best they can within the frameworks in which they operate. Our findings therefore reflect not a lack of effort or capability, but the lack of clear directions, coordination and strategic oversight at the center of the government. Over time, the government and state assemblies have established and funded a growing number of organizations to deliver services or advance policy objectives. Many were created for sound reasons, responded to clear needs. However, responsibility does not end at the point that the organization is created or grant is awarded. The government must ensure that these bodies have clear purpose, that success is defined and measured, and the organizations operate a part of coherent system rather than in isolation. The review found that once established, organizations tend to continue operating even when the original need has changed or diminished. In some cases, funding continues through repeat or additional top-up grants, which can blur baseline funding, weaken challenge of continuing need, and obscure the true cost of ongoing reliance on public money. Without regular strategic reassessment, it becomes difficult to judge whether organization remains the best way to deliver services or whether roles overlap with other bodies and government functions. We found that while the Public Finance Manual includes governance framework and its application across organization is uneven. Annual accountable officers' reviews play an important role, but it's not a substitute for structured, strategic, and periodic reviews. Only one such review has been published in recent years, and it demonstrated how beneficial such work can be for alignment, governance, and confidence. This review also identified variability in how performance is measured and reported. While the committee acknowledged the key performance indicators are widely used by arm's length bodies, and the different organizations require different measures, there is no consistent approach in definition, baselines, and target settings. Alignment with the island outcomes is inconsistent, and reporting often focuses more on activity than the long-term outcomes. We also identify areas of overlap and duplication, including in property development and certain public service functions. While collaboration does occur, clearer strategic leadership from the center of the government would help conflicted responsibilities, reduce duplication, and ensure that public resources are deployed effectively and coherently. The committee recognized that many arm's length bodies are already taking steps to improve productivity, manage cost pressures, and supplement public funding where appropriate. However, we consider that there is a value in more holistic examination of overall estate, which could include shared premises, joint procurement, shared support services, streamlined governance model, reduced scope, amalgamation, or where appropriate, discontinuous. Any such changes would need to be carefully considered to ensure outcomes are not compromised. Consignment of resource requirements of staffing were also considered remuneration of arm's length bodies. While we do not question the commitment or professionalism of employees of the arm's length bodies, greater consistency and clarity in the remuneration framework would strengthen public assurance. In particular, clear alignment between base pay progression, civil service pay structure, and additional or bonus payments being linked to organizational purpose would support transparency and accountability. And overall, following 31 findings, the committee made 12 recommendations to strengthen clarity, consistency, and strategic coherence. This includes providing clear definitions within the Public Finance Manual, particularly in regarding subsidies in differential between grants and contract for services, publication of complete list of arm's length bodies and relevant accountable officers, improving strategic leadership from government bodies such as arm's length bodies oversight board and regeneration steering group, introducing key performance indicators guidance, undertaking internal reviews to identify potential areas of savings within arm's length bodies estate in order to present findings and potential options for the next Council of Ministers, and formulating plan to undertake periodic strategic reviews by the executive. Following concerns raised by arm's length bodies and grant recipients, we also recommended that any significant changes to grant funding should only take place within at least 12 months' notice, except in exceptional circumstances, to ensure that organizations can plan responsibly and maintain service delivery. To conclude, this review does not suggest that arm's length bodies or grant arrangements are inherently problematic. Many deliver substantial value to islanders. The issue is cumulative effect of growth without a system-wide strategic view of necessity, duplications, outcome, and affordability. At a time of economic uncertainty and increasing pressure on public services, Jersey cannot afford a system that is complex but poorly connected. The committee's recommendation focus on practical improvements to strengthen purpose, improvement, accountability, and ensure that public money delivers real benefits for islanders. I would like to thank our officers and stakeholders who contributed to the review, and I thank my fellow committee members to their diligence, constructive challenge, and commitment throughout the review, and I'm welcoming questions.
Thank you, Chair. Are there questions for the Chair of PAC? Yes, Trudy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. The report includes evidence of the positive impact that the review of Jersey Sport had, and in fact states that it was the only such body to be reviewed in this way. As the then Assistant Minister who commissioned that review, I'm very pleased to see that referred to in that context and the very clear evidence that it has had a positive impact. Will the Chair set out how she believes the government should use this example going forward, and does she believe that such reviews can represent significant value for money? As an example, the Jersey Sport Review cost just over £18,000. Thank you, sir.
Chair of PAC.
I'm grateful for the question because my belief, since I was the chair of the PAC at the previous term when we suggested strategic review of States of Jersey Development Company that still hasn't taken place, I truly believe the strategic reviews are extremely important, that we can understand what are the values and also improve. I would like to read out to the members the feedback that we received. Jersey Sport, this review was extremely helpful in our strategic realignment and has resulted in high level of stakeholder satisfaction. I would recommend that all arm's length organizations go through the same process. And this was what they received, what public received. Public received better value for money, better service delivery. It did cost 18,000, but what we will receive in now, it costs above and beyond, and it's clear remit for this organization. This is why the committee was very clear there is a difference from annual appraisal to strategic review.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. Following her committee's review, are there any organisations that the committee believes should be prioritised for such a similar full review? Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really important that the government will look through, and this is why one of our recommendations saying that the government need to introduce the plan. Why I mentioned States of Jersey Development Company? Because this was recommendations from this Controller and Auditor General that was accepted, and it was further recommendations from PAC that was accepted, and this recommendation still hasn't been delivered. But saying this, I believe that each organization would require to go through the strategic review at some time, because none of them were conducted. I would consider about the clusters. If you're thinking about economic development delivery agencies, they need to look together and to see where the stuff can be done in better together as amalgamation, maybe, to deliver value for money.
Morel.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Chair and her panel for their report. I think there were some absolutely valid and very interesting findings and recommendations in the report, sir. One of the things that I wonder if the Chair could enlighten me as to whether the panel took into account the independence of certain arm's length bodies and their desire to use political means to maintain their positions or their current strategic aims, as opposed to just being simple delivery vehicles for government aims. So rather than being passive and just doing what the government asked for, whether they looked at the situation where actually in the arm's length bodies choose their own paths as to what they want to do, and even at times lobby against the government, whether this was something that featured in the reviews.
Yeah.
It's very interesting question. I'm reflecting through the process that we got through. Each body very independent, and they have their own boards. What we found that government gives different ministers touching to different bodies. So one body can connect to 3-4 ministers through their delivery, even though there is only one accountable officer. And when body engage with 2-3 different ministers and 2-3 different accountable officers in their day-to-day, day-to-day business, the message is inconsistent. And this body is pulled to different direction. And what is really required, and this is why I put an hour, that the government needs to make clear what they want from the bodies, clear guidance, clear vision, clear KPIs, and the body needs to deliver.
Supplementary? No. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so the Chair, thank you. I thank the Chair very much for the report, and very timely. The Chair made reference early on in her statement to the fact that some bodies continued when perhaps their work or funding needs were no longer as much as they once were. Has she got any examples she can give?
Chair.
It's about, there is lots of, okay, I'll go back. I don't want to single out one specific body because it would be unfair because each body have changed their remits. Saying this, I would like to give one of the examples to consider. Then we had Digital Academy. And I'll give it like a Digital Academy. Digital Academy did receive some funds. The funds were cut, and after they received more funds. And the next thing that we know, that government opening Digital Academy internally instead of using the Digital Academy that we set in Digital Jersey. So there's lots of duplications, but the funds continue to come or to cut without assessing what we want these bodies to deliver. And this is why I'm asking for the strategic review, that the grants can be adjusted according to what we expect in these bodies to deliver.
Supplementary?
Yes, so does the Chair think that there's quite a lot of money to be saved this way, or is it relatively a small amount of money?
Chair.
But that's why we need strategic reviews. For example, if we have 5 organizations that do it marketing for Jersey outside of Jersey, we need to understand, is this marketing functions in 5 delivery bodies can be worked together? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's finance for me, or if it's tourism, or if it's anything else, we are still advertising Jersey and attracting people to Jersey.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. This follows on, although I believe Deputy Morell anticipated me in terms of a question I was going to ask about the difference between certain types of ALOs, and in particular their rationale, because we're aware that our Chief Executive has questioned their very existence to some extent, but also that they serve different roles. I have being delegated ministerial responsibility, for example, for the Information Commissioner, who is there to protect civil rights, and that can be against government. So I'm wondering, I'm wondering the extent to which you feel that the report actually really explores this the difference in rationale between regulatory organisations and deliberately. I love the musical background.
Made a noise. It's a £10 fine for.
So the So the rationale between some of these ALOs, and also in the case of delivery agencies, because you know, some really successful economies don't have these, and some don't. But the rationale comes down to internal red tape in government itself, and the extent to which the PAC has explored that as a justification for ALOs. I've got another question, but I'll try and ask that separately. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to answer the question. So actually, when we started the review, I think it started from the headlines that the CEO gave at the Chamber of Commerce lunch, when I think still people at the public mentioning 140, I think 144, don't catch me on the numbers, the arm's length organizations. So when we started to look where we have 144, because in the public finance manual, it's much less organization mentioned as LOBs. So we did look into, and we decided to put the scope into states-owned entities, states-established delivery entities, and states-established independent bodies or office holders. And we did look, and we emailed to all grant recipients. But was very interesting, if you get to the appendix, and appendix what it did on page 84, 85, even within these categories, some of the organizations are included in the public finance manual and must follow the fully public finance manual, and some of them are not included in the public finance manual. For example, from the states established independent bodies and office holders, we do have a care commissioner, a commissioner for children and young people, data protection authority. There are a couple more included. And my question, why, for example, charity commissioner is not included in the same list? Another problem, when we started our review, people approach us, ask, for example, if I would like to complain to the about the work of the charity commissioner, who do I complain to? And I said, oh, it should be complaint policy on the website. And we looked through the website, and it was no complaints policy on the website. So basically, the person doesn't know how to complain if he is not happy to work with. I'm not telling that the person needs to complain. And there are others as well. So what's important, it's really consistency. This is why our second recommendation asks government to publish the complete list, because it's very difficult to find complete list in one place, and to identify the relevant Government of Jersey accountable officer to each of these organizations, that the public can clearly understand what are the bodies and who is in the government accountable to them.
Supplementary?
Well, I don't feel that the chair has answered my question about internal red tape as a justification for establishing ALOs that are delivery agencies, sir. So might I ask her to just expand on her answer?
Do you want to clarify what your question is, just so she's clear about it?
I said that the rationale for creating different ALOs is different, that some are actually deliberately dependent from government because to protect civil rights. Others are delivery agencies, and there's some sort of variation between jurisdictions, whether they have delivery agencies or not. But generally, those that do, it's because of internal red tape within government itself that actually.
And your question is?
So the question is, did the PAC explore that rationale?
We explore rationale how they were created, and what we said, they were created because we needed to deliver something, the policy development, and there was lots of things happening within the government that was created. What we are saying that it's about time to look back and to say, do they still serve the purpose? Do all economic areas are represented, and what can be done? I'm not sure if the Deputy in another question will give specific example. Maybe it will be clear to understand what Deputy is referring to.
You have asked two questions, but you may say your first question wasn't really answered.
A supplemental thing.
All right, yes.
yes, the actual point was about, we'll get back to the public finance manual, because basically I wanted to ask a question there about, there's been a mention, there's been some exploration of how these different entities are treated on the finance manual, and also about their KPIs. Now, I'm aware that many of these agency LOs and the way in which the KPIs are being looked at is using a system called outcome-based accountability, and that there is some, I know I have been in discussions about how granular the principal counting...
Is it possible for you to come to a question a bit more quickly, because your question's often prefaced by almost a speech.
Okay, so how granular should the principal accounting officer, for example, in the Department of Economy be when setting KPIs for ALOs using outcomes-based accountability?
Thank you, yes.
Well, first of all of the organizations do have KPIs. What we found that some KPIs are not outcome-based and some KPIs are outcome-based. This is why we had the recommendations that we would like to see KPIs that outcome-based and related to the island outcomes. As an examples, we did
We've
find...
come to the 15 minutes. Do members wish to extend the 15 minutes or not? There's no appetite to extend the 15 minutes unless someone makes a proposition to that effect. That completes the period of questions for the chair of PAC. The last statement is from the Minister for the Environment, and his statement is in relation to the first Climate Council report. Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I'll try to be as fast as I can. Sir, I wish to inform members that the Independent Climate Council has completed its first 4-year review of progress in delivering the carbon neutral roadmap. This fulfills the requirement established by this Assembly for an independent scientific climate council. I've now lodged the Council's report with the GREF, and it's also available on gov.je. This first Climate Council report presents a comprehensive evaluation of the government's implementation of the carbon neutral roadmap during the first period of from 2022 to 2025. The report represents a significant moment in our climate governance, providing independent, expert climate analysis of our achievements to date, where we currently stand, and where delivery must improve. Before highlighting the Council's key findings, I'd like to commend their work to the Assembly. This is a rigorous but also a realistic report, which I believe members will find both challenging and encouraging. In 2019, we recognised the climate emergency and later committed to reduce our carbon emissions to net zero by 2050, with interim targets in 2030 and 2035. This unprecedented transition requires our long-term commitment alongside our most pressing immediate challenges. It is something we are approaching in parallel with other nations, as each of us unpick our specific challenges. The Climate Council have recognised our early wins and the fact that we are now into the hard yards of decarbonising transport, heating and waste. This is a shared endeavour that deserves our attention and consideration as an issue that will increasingly shape our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren. So what have they said? The Climate Council is clear that Jersey begins from a position of strength, but it also makes it clear that we must move faster. Our strong foundations include our predominantly decarbonised electricity supply. Our electricity infrastructure is in relatively good order, and early investment in social housing, all of which reduced emissions before the roadmap's inception. We possess a unique capacity to shape our own pathway, given our legislative autonomy. Our financial services industry also has the potential to play a truly meaningful global role in influencing sustainable investment beyond our shores. However, the Council is equally clear that on our current trajectory, we are not on track to meet our interim 2030 target. While this is already understood, they stress that the biggest barrier is not technology, nor a lack of viable solutions, but policy uncertainty and continued investment in new fossil fuel systems that lock in emissions for decades. Transport remains our largest emissions source, with progress on electric vehicles, public transport and infrastructure still in its early stages. Heating too presents a significant gap. Low carbon heating grants have helped, but uptake is uneven, and the Council argue that without a clear timeline for phasing out fossil fuel boilers, the market will not make the necessary investments at the pace required. In relation to the development of sustainable finance within our International Finance Centre, the Council warns that Jersey risks falling behind in competitor jurisdictions and could become a dumping ground for high carbon assets unless we move faster on frameworks, skills and disclosures. They also raise issue of competitiveness and reputation as much as environmental ones. Crucially, the Council's analysis confirms that net zero by 2050 remains both feasible and affordable, but only with stronger delivery. The Council's recommendations are clear. Government must provide stable, multi-year policy and funding, accelerate transport measures including pricing reform, activate travel, public transport, legislate where commitments already exist, develop long-term plans for waste and circular economy, and finally strengthen system-level governance, analytics and delivery. These are areas where I believe context is important, particularly balancing ambition with budget and resources constraints, but the broad direction they advise is consistent with where we must go and are indeed headed. The Council's own modelling indicates that at system level, deep decarbonisation does not require higher long-term fuel costs per capita, especially when we accelerate the adoption of heat pumps and remove waste incineration from the electricity mix. Electricity demand growth is manageable with a steady transition and prudent planning, areas where Jersey enjoys advantages compared to many jurisdictions. The Council conclude that the principal challenges facing Jersey are how we manage the capital cost of transitioning energy systems and the residual value of fossil fuel systems in a socially just manner, rather than just technical or long-term economic concerns. The Council's report is also explicit about the counterfactual. Delayed actions raises total costs, risks asset lock-in, undermines our international credibility, exposes households to volatile fossil fuel prices, and threatens our competitive position, particularly in finance. There are also negative public health and air quality implications from continued fossil fuel use in transport and heating. We will now carefully review the recommendations made by the Council. Consideration of their analysis will inform policy development for the next delivery phase of the carbon neutral roadmap. The next phase of the CNR is critical. The Council's work provides us with the information we need to act decisively and transparently. I would like to express my thanks to the Council for their professionalism, independence and candour, and commend their report to the Assembly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Are there questions for the Minister? Deputy Brenoff.
Yes, sir, thanks very much. And I'd like to echo the Minister's comments about the report, which I think is really excellent and a very, very sound guide to where we are and where we need to get to. The Minister says in his statements that the Council says the biggest barrier is not technology, it is lack of political decision-making and particularly consistency, particularly where, where we're potentially locking in investment into legacy fossil fuel systems. Given that, what does he think the Climate Council would say about his decision coming up on the relaxation of the ban on imports of new cars?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And I think I can say that in the brief discussion I have had with the Climate Council, I would hope that they would understand my decision. I've been very clear of the reasons why I have done what I've done, and I've used the just transition and the ability for those who can't afford to buy expensive vehicles as the main reason. But I have, in making that decision, also said that I believe there are other ways of getting to the same conclusion, of taking another road to get to the same destination. And when you look at the Climate Council report, they hint at it. And that is the way of using vehicle emissions duty, import tariffs, fuel duty, and other ways of trying to steer customer behaviour and encourage islanders to do better. So while on one hand, they may well be critical of my refusal to ban used vehicles for importing in 2030, I have made a decision, which is maybe not the one that other people may have come to, the other conclusions that people may have come to, but they do say uncertainty and lack of policy clear decision making was one thing, and I've made a decision. We're not going down that route. We're going to try to get to the same destination by another road.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I actually specifically said new vehicles. The decision he's coming to with regard to new vehicles. Given that the Climate Council has indeed says that uncertainty has weakened market signals and the biggest risks arrive from delaying action, both of those quotes, does the Minister accept that if he does not at least stick to the proposed ban on the importing of new vehicles by 2030, that he will simply be accused of talking the talk but being afraid to actually walk the walk?
Minister.
I can see where the Deputy's coming from, sir, and certainly that may be the conclusion that some will come to if in a few weeks' time I come back to the Assembly and say that I'm also going to withdraw the ban on new vehicles. But if I did that, it might be because, for example, we are going to align ourselves to UK policy on vehicles, and UK current policy is to ban the production of petrol and diesel vehicles in 2030. I have come to the conclusion, rightly or wrongly, but the amount of work we would have to do on island in coming forward with legislation and policy work, officer time, resource, would be wasted if the decision we made was then replicated in the UK and imposed upon us indirectly. So I feel quite clearly, and I have got to finish reading the conclusions of the consultation and indeed the great detail in the Climate Council's report, but I feel that we may well be headed for a situation where a decision is made possibly to also ban the importation of, to step away from the ban and the phasing out of the importation of new vehicles in 2030.
Is there much of a mood for an adjournment? There isn't much of a mood for it. You can propose if you want to, but I don't think you'll necessarily succeed. There's a question from Deputy Chairman, but there may be other questions. You contend not to propose it now, would you? All right. Deputy Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And I also would like to welcome the report and thank the Council, the Climate Council, for all the details, and also the fact that I have, as Chair of Scrutiny Panel, been all the way along this process, working with the Minister and supporting the Council in providing this report. And so I would like to ask the Minister, after making a statement that in one of the media outlets today, the title is Jersey's Government Guilty of Climate Hypocrisy? And I was wondering if the Minister would like to respond to that, and does he believe that government is guilty of climate hypocrisy?
Minister.
So before I ask come to my answer, can I just ask the Deputy, is there a certain context in which that might be phrased?
I believe it's related to the Climate Council's focusing that that polluter pays principles have been weakened or abandoned, and some high emission activities such as aviation remains untaxed, as well as the fact that there have been several government buildings and refurbishments where fossil fuel boilers have been reinstated. I know I've already mentioned in the past the States Assembly that I pointed that out when the Opera House was being refurbished, and there had to be a change of tact due to that pressure. But obviously they must have found, the council may have found other public buildings since I was in government where fossil fuel boilers have been replaced.
Minister.
Yes, sir, I see where the Deputy's going. And before I get to my brief answer, can I just thank her, sir, for her input. As chair of my scrutiny panel, we've sat together at the start of the Climate Council work and at the conclusion of that work, and very shortly, once my officers have had a chance to debrief the Climate Council again on where we might go with our next stages of phase 2, and continuing with our low carbon initiatives. I'm sure that both the Minister and the Chair will continue to work on that. So I just want to thank her publicly for her help there, sir. There could well be some hypocrisy aimed at government. It's not that long ago that we made some decisions to reinstall carbon burning boilers in schools and other large public buildings, and that's the sort of hypocrisy that the council will be talking of in some areas. If government are going to try to say that we need to go for low carbon, it's going to somehow be incumbent upon government to make sure that we walk the walk and not just talk the talk. But there will be other areas where we may in the past have not been quite as good as others. Certainly at the start of granting money for electric vehicles, it was certainly aimed at us that we were subsidising people who could afford to buy those vehicles in the first place. And in the early days that may have been the case, but certainly I would say in most recent times the grant scheme has aided more used vehicles than new vehicles coming into the island. There will be other areas where the Climate Council have criticised us for not being fair enough, and I think in the future we will certainly have to look at ways of helping those less well off. We need to do that by maybe looking to increase the levy on fuel duty in order that we can have some money back to help those that are less able to pay. There may be other areas, similar veins, where we have a levy in order to help those who are less well off. So I accept the Deputy's point. There is work to do, clearly, and it's going to be incumbent upon the next Minister to analyse the outcome of this Climate Council report and see where we can make progress at lowering our carbon emissions, helping those with the least ability to navigate their way through, and also make some fundamental changes, like rather than insisting that people move to electricity, maybe allowing them to continue to burn oil but at a larger levy on that oil so that we move that way. Or in other ways we might do would be to increase the insulation on all property, regardless of how it is the heating is fueled, so that we actually use less energy and less oil. So there's a lot of work to do, sir. But the next Minister will be able to get to grips with this report. There's a huge amount of good work in it.
Supplementary?
Yes, and I thank the Minister for his recognition of mine and my panel's work on this area, but also maybe carrying on from this, we're focusing in on the fossil fuels and obviously in relation to climate change. But maybe it needs to now be framed in a wider context. We've just seen that the price of oil has gone up $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022, since COVID, and therefore this could also be seen by weaning Jersey and wider community off fossil fuel is also not just good for climate change, but it's also to try to reduce our reliance on the Middle East and the fact that there's potential conflicts will carry on into the future, and we need to be have more local supplies of
You want to come to a question,
renewable
Deputy
energy.
Chair?
Does the Minister agree with me that the discussions on fossil fuel and access to renewable energy to fuel our cars is more than just climate change?
Absolutely, sir. The deputy raises a very good point. We've all seen the volatility in the energy markets in the last few days, specifically around gas, oil, and of course electricity will always be impacted, but not to such a great extent. And it's clear that sustainable energy is consistent and costs the same amount one day to the next, even though, of course, it may be slightly affected by the average price of energy in global markets. But I thank the deputy for her question and agree, sir.
Well, if there are no further questions, then Councillor Greville, have you got a proposition you want to make? The adjournment proposed. Members content to adjourn?
So
Deputy Balash.
before we adjourn, I wonder if you would allow me to make a proposition in relation to the order of business tomorrow.
Well, the adjournment's been... Well, what is the proposition you propose to make?
Well, I would like to propose that P47, the suspension of Deputy Ozov, be postponed until the 24th of March. Deputy Ozov is...
yes, I think that's probably a proposition for tomorrow morning because the adjournment has been proposed.
I thought it might be helpful to members to decide that this evening, but if you're
well, they've
ruling...
heard what you said, and if the adjournment is proposed, is that seconded?
So can I just ask, so we know why it's being proposed, on what basis?
Well, we can't have two propositions being dealt with at once. Are you happy to withdraw your proposition momentarily while we hear this? Or do you want to maintain your proposition? No, I don't think so. Do you want to stand up when you address the chair's customer?
I'd like to maintain my proposition that we adjourn now and take that proposition tomorrow morning, sir.
Yes. Well, that's the first proposition in time. That's the way we deal with things. Anyone wish to speak on the proposition? Those in favour of adjourning now kindly show. Thank you. Those against? The Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.